Hello. Welcome to OJ Studios. Please enjoy part 2 of Flower Girl for Hire by Olivia Julius.
Chapter 7, Waking Up Zoe. I woke slowly, blinking into the pale morning light that leaked through the small window above the bunk. The ceiling tiles were the first thing I saw, little white squares with faint, uneven patterns that looked like clouds if you stared long enough. I stared at them for a while. The trailer was quiet, except for the soft hum of the tiny fan by the dresser, and beneath me, Shelby's faint, rhythmic snoring. It came in soft little bursts, rising and falling like waves. She slept like she lived, completely unbothered. But I was awake. Awake and very aware of what I was wearing. The silky fabric of the nightgown clung softly against my body as I shifted. I could feel the way it draped over my legs, brushing against the smooth pink and purple sheets. The frilly cap sleeves tickled my shoulders slightly. My bare feet slid easily across the cool fabric beneath the comforter. A girl's nightgown. On me. And yet, it didn't feel as strange as it had last night. If anything, it felt strangely normal now. The weight of it, the softness of the material, the way the fabric swished lightly when I shifted, it had become familiar in the span of just one night. Like my body had already learned how to exist inside it. I curled up slightly beneath the covers, pulling them closer around me. The comforter smelled like Shelby's fabric softener, sweet, like vanilla cupcakes. The soft pink color wrapped around me like a giant hug, and for the first time since I'd started this whole thing, I didn't feel nervous, or embarrassed. I just felt comfortable, cozy, safe. If someone had told me even 2 days ago that I'd be lying here in a girl's nightgown, and pink sheets, with a flower girl dress hanging neatly on a hook nearby, I would have laughed. Or panicked. Probably both. But now I was just here. Still Dylan, maybe. But also Zoe. At least for now. I closed my eyes again for a moment, listening to the steady breathing from the bunk below. The morning felt soft. Slow. Like it didn't want to rush me into anything yet. And for once, I was grateful for that. I must have drifted off again, because the next thing I heard was Shelby's voice calling softly from below. "Hey, Zoe! You awake?" I blinked and stared at the ceiling for a moment before answering, my voice still scratchy from sleep. "Yeah." Her bed creaked as she shifted beneath me. "You want to keep training today? We can keep going if you're up for it." I hesitated. The nightgown rustled softly as I shifted under the covers, the silky fabric cool against my skin. Part of me was still scared, scared of what training might mean next, scared of how far I was letting this go, but another part, the part that had gotten used to the nightgown, to the dress, to being called Zoe, didn't want to stop either. I guess so," I said quietly. "But I don't know if I want to wear another dress today." Shelby laughed gently. "That's okay. You don't have to." I could hear the grin in her voice as she added, "Actually, I've got an idea for today's outfit. Something different. I think you're gonna like it." That made my stomach flutter again. "Different how?" "You'll see," she teased. "Get up, get your wig on, and I'll grab it." I sat up slowly, the nightgown slipping around my legs as I swung my feet over the edge of the bed. The flats from yesterday still sat neatly on the floor, waiting. I slipped them on without thinking, like they already belonged there. As I stood, the silky nightgown shifted gently around my knees, and I patted softly to the mirror. The wig sat neatly on the dresser where Shelby had placed it last night. I picked it up, adjusted the cap, and carefully settled the soft brown waves onto my head. My reflection stared back, tired but somehow ready. "Zoe again." Shelby appeared behind me in the mirror holding a hanger with her surprise. It wasn't a dress. But it was close. A soft, pleated skirt, light pink with tiny white polka dots, hung from the hanger. Underneath it, she paired a simple white t-shirt with a small glittery heart on the chest. My heart skipped. A skirt! Still girly. Still very different from anything I'd ever worn. But Maybe a little less scary than a full dress. Shelby beamed at me in the mirror. See? I told you you'd like it. I swallowed hard, my stomach twisting in that same strange way it always seemed to now. Do you want to try it? She asked gently. I looked at the outfit again. At my reflection. And after a long pause, I nodded. Yeah, I whispered. Okay. Shelby handed me the outfit along with a fresh pair of underwear from the bag we bought yesterday. This pair was light blue, matching the skirt, with tiny little flowers printed along the waistband and a thin lace trim around the legs. Much girlier than the plain black ones I'd chosen before. I stared at the underwear for a moment, feeling that familiar swirl in my stomach. Part of me wanted to reach for the safer, more neutral option again. But another part whispered that maybe, if I was going to do this, I should really do it. I took a breath, gave Shelby a small nod, and slipped into the bathroom to change. The light buzzed faintly overhead as I set the clothes on the counter and undressed, carefully slipping out of the nightgown. The silky fabric glided off my skin like it didn't want to let go, pooling quietly on the floor at my feet. Standing there in just my wig cap and nothing else, I reached for the blue underwear. The fabric felt softer than I expected as I stepped into them, snug, light, and smooth as they hugged my waist and legs. The lace trim tickled slightly against my skin, reminding me with every movement that these were absolutely not boys' clothes. I exhaled slowly, my heart pounding. Then I reached for the shirt. It was light blue like the skirt, but with a small, shimmery design printed across the chest, delicate silver vines curling into the shape of a heart with tiny pastel flowers blooming around it. The fabric clung softly to my frame as I pulled it over my head, the short sleeves brushing against my shoulders. Finally, I picked up the skirt. The material was light and airy, made of soft pleats that shifted easily as I stepped into it and pulled it up over my hips. It wasn't tight, just enough to stay in place comfortably. The waistband rested gently at my waist, and the skirt swished lightly around my thighs, stopping a few inches above my knees. I paused in front of the mirror. The skirt moved every time I did, not heavy, not stiff, but light, almost floating with the smallest turn or shift of my hips. It felt free, like air. The entire outfit was soft, delicate, and unmistakably girly. But as I stared at myself, long brown hair framing my face, the light blue fabric swaying gently around me, I realized I didn't feel like I was wearing a costume. Not today. I just felt like Zoe. And somehow, that didn't feel as scary as it used to. I stepped out of the bathroom slowly, my bare feet making soft taps on the hallway floor. The skirt swished gently with every step, brushing against my legs in ways that still caught me off guard, but not as sharply as before. Shelby was waiting for me, sitting cross-legged on her bed, and the moment she saw me, her whole face lit up. "Oh my gosh," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Zoe, you look adorable!" I flushed, looking down instinctively, watching the pleats of the skirt shift as I fidgeted. "I feel weird," I admitted, though my voice was quieter this time. Less panicked. Less embarrassed. "Not bad. Just weird." "That's okay," Shelby said gently, standing up and circling me slowly like she was inspecting a masterpiece. "You're getting used to it. And honestly, you're pulling this off better than I thought you would after just one day." I gave her a shy smile. She tugged gently at the hem of my shirt, adjusting the way it sat against my waist, smoothing out a wrinkle like she'd done this 100 times before. Then she brushed a bit of wig hair behind my ear and stepped back. "Perfect!" I shifted my weight again, the skirt following every move like it was alive. "You ready for the next part?" she asked, suddenly sounding a little too cheerful. I blinked. "Next part? We've gotta go back to your aunt's house." My stomach flipped. What? Why? "I have rehearsal today," she said, like it was no big deal. "The one for the Mackenzie wedding tomorrow. I'm one of the main flower girls, remember? They need me for practice." "But I'm not part of that wedding." "Right, you're not allowed at the rehearsal. It's just for the real bridal party and stand-ins like me. but my mom's dropping me off, and we need to swing by your aunt's place first." My breath caught in my throat. Back to my aunt's. As Zoe. Not in private. Not just with Shelby. Back to Aunt Meredith. Back to the place where all of this started. Where I was still supposed to be Dylan. The fear came rushing back, sharp and sudden, curling in my stomach like a knot. "Shelby," I said quietly, "what if my aunt sees me?" She gave me a soft, understanding look and stepped closer. "She already knows you're doing this, remember? She's the one who suggested it." "Yeah, but it's different now." "You look great, Zoe," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "You've got the outfit, the wig, everything. She's not going to be mad. She'll probably be impressed." I swallowed hard and nodded, but my hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with the hem of my skirt. Shelby reached out and gently took my hands in hers, squeezing them. "You've come this far. You're doing great. Just a quick stop, then I'll head to rehearsal. You can hang out at your aunt's house and relax for the rest of the day." I nodded again, slower this time. I could do this. I had to do this. But still, my heart wouldn't quite stop pounding. The car bumped gently along the two-lane road, the engine humming quietly beneath us. Shelby and I sat in the back seat while her mom drove, soft music playing on the radio up front. The morning sun flickered through the trees, making little patches of light dance across my lap and the pale pleats of my skirt. I kept my hands folded, fiddling nervously with the hem, feeling the smooth fabric brush against my fingertips. The soft swish of the skirt with every movement was still impossible to ignore. It wasn't that I didn't like it. That was the problem. I did like it. More than I wanted to admit. Shelby leaned closer and grinned. "So, we've got a few hours before the rehearsal," she said softly, like she was offering some secret adventure. "Plenty of time for us to do something fun." "Like what?" I asked, my voice still quiet, still unsure. "We could go back to my house for a bit," she offered. "Maybe do some more practice, or just hang out, or we can grab lunch. Up to you." I hesitated for a second, then looked down at myself again. "Well, once you go to your rehearsal, I guess I'll just go back to my aunt's house and change back into my regular clothes." Shelby's grin widened, not in a mean way, but in that way she always smiled when she was already 10 steps ahead of me. "No you're not." I blinked. "What?" She reached down, patted the bag sitting at her feet, and said proudly, "I packed you clothes." I stared at her. "Girl clothes," she clarified, like I hadn't figured that out already. "Enough for a few days. Outfits, underwear, even a few more skirts. Your aunt knows," she said it was okay. "I figured it'd be easier if you stayed in practice mode for the whole weekend." My heart did a little flip, unsure whether to be embarrassed or oddly relieved. "But I still have my regular clothes at my aunt's house," I pointed out. "All my boy clothes are still there." Shelby just shrugged, leaning back against the seat with a satisfied little smile. "Yeah, that's an option. If you really want to go back to them, you can. I'm not stopping you. But," she looked over at me, her voice turning gentle, "it'll make the wedding a lot easier if you stay as Zoe the whole time." I didn't respond right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. The idea of slipping back into my boy clothes sounded safe. Familiar. But also weird now. Like I'd be stepping backwards somehow. And deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted to undo what we'd already done. I rubbed my thumb over the hem of my skirt again, feeling the soft fabric bunch under my fingers, the quiet swish as it shifted across my lap with the car's movement. Shelby let me sit in the silence for a while. She didn't pressure me. She didn't have to. The car kept moving forward. And so, I realized, was I. The car ride grew quieter as we got closer to my aunt's house. Outside the window, the trees grew familiar again. The winding turns. The narrow gravel pull-offs. The distant shape of the barn starting to rise over the tops of the fields. The wedding venue. My stomach twisted a little tighter with every passing mailbox. The pleats of my skirt shifted with every little bump in the road, brushing softly against my legs, a constant reminder of who I was pretending to be. Of how far I'd let this go. Of how far I still might go. Shelby hadn't said anything for the last few minutes. She sat beside me, calm and quiet, as though she could feel the nerves rolling off me and didn't want to push. Her mom made the final turn, and Aunt Meredith's house came into view at the end of the long gravel driveway. The barn sat behind it like a giant shadow. I swallowed hard, my hands tightening in my lap. In a few seconds, we'd pull in. In a few seconds, I'd be standing in front of my aunt as Zoe. In a few seconds, I'd find out if I could really do this. The tires crunched on the gravel. The car slowed. And then, Shelby's mom said softly, "Oh!" I looked up, and saw someone standing in the driveway, waiting. Chapter 8 Caught. The moment I saw her, my heart dropped. It was my mom. Standing right there in the driveway. She had her arms loosely crossed, wearing jeans and a simple blouse, her car parked nearby like she'd only just arrived. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were searching, confused, already narrowing. Without thinking, I unbuckled my seatbelt and pushed the car door open. "Mom!" I called out automatically, stepping onto the gravel. The soft crunch of my flats hit my ears half a second too late. The breeze caught the hem of my light blue skirt, making it flutter gently around my legs. My wig shifted slightly as I moved, brushing against my shoulders. I froze. I wasn't Dylan right now. I was Zoe. The soft, pleated skirt. The pale blue shirt with a glittery design. The floral underwear hidden underneath. The flats. The wig. Everything screamed girl. And I had just run straight into my mom's line of sight. She blinked, looking me up and down as if she needed a second to process what she was seeing. "Dylan?" she asked, her voice careful, controlled. "Why are you?" Her eyes swept over me again, landing on the wig, the skirt, the way my arms instinctively crossed to cover my stomach like that would somehow hide everything. "Why are you dressed like a girl?" she finally asked. The words hit me like a punch. Not angry. Not shouting. Just confused. Direct. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Behind me, I heard Shelby quietly climbing out of the car, but I barely noticed. My breath felt caught in my throat as my heart pounded against my ribs. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not now. I swallowed hard. But I had no idea what to say. My hands fidgeted at the hem of the skirt, twisting the soft fabric between my fingers. I could feel my mom's eyes still on me, waiting, confused, but not angry. Not yet. I took a shaky breath and forced myself to speak. It's for the wedding," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyebrows pinched together. "The wedding?" "Yeah. At Aunt Meredith's place." I swallowed hard, the words stumbling out faster now. They needed a flower girl for one of the weddings. The dress, there was this dress that was really important to the family. But the girl who was supposed to wear it couldn't come. Shelby tried it on, but it didn't fit her. I could hear my voice wavering, but I pushed forward anyway. And I was the only one who could fit in the dress. My mom blinked, trying to process everything. "So they asked you?" I nodded quickly, my face burning. Shelby finally stepped up beside me, her voice calm and steady. "He volunteered to help, Mrs. Carter. My mom and Aunt Meredith thought it would work, and he agreed. We've been practicing since yesterday so he can do the flower girl role properly." "Practicing?" my mom repeated, glancing back at me, at the wig, the skirt, the glittery design on my shirt. "You've been? Since yesterday?" I nodded again, even smaller this time. "It was supposed to be temporary," I said softly. "Just for the wedding. That's all." The breeze caught my skirt again, making it flutter slightly against my legs, like a constant reminder of how far I'd gone. My mom's eyes softened a little as she looked at me, but her voice stayed quiet, cautious. "And you're okay with this?" I hesitated. The easy answer would have been yes. Or no. But instead, I whispered the truth I hadn't fully admitted to myself yet. I don't know." For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The weight of my own words hung in the air, heavier than anything I'd worn so far. My mom glanced at Shelby, then back to me, her expression somewhere between concern, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite read. And just like that, everything felt fragile again. Like one wrong word might shatter it all. My mom finally exhaled, shaking her head slightly as she glanced away for a second. "I knew taking you to your aunt's was a bad idea," she muttered under her breath, but not angry, more like she was talking to herself. Like she was trying to make sense of everything that had unfolded. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not because she was yelling, but because part of me suddenly worried that maybe she was right. Maybe I had gotten in over my head. Maybe this wasn't normal. Maybe standing here in a girl's wig and a skirt, clutching the hem of my shirt like it was a safety blanket, wasn't something she could ever understand. Shelby stepped forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Carter, it wasn't anything bad. Dylan wanted to help. Nobody made him do it." "I didn't say anyone made him," my mom said softly. But, she looked at me again, her eyes scanning everything I was wearing, her voice lowering. "Dylan, this isn't who you are." I opened my mouth, but my voice caught. Because I didn't know how to answer that. "Was it? Wasn't it?" "It's just for the wedding," I whispered, trying to make it sound simple, like that would make everything okay. My mom didn't say anything at first. She just kept looking at me, like she was seeing me for the first time, and not sure if she liked what she saw. The silence stretched longer than I could handle. And with every second, I felt smaller inside my skirt and wig. Before anyone else could speak, the sound of a screen door creaked open behind us. Aunt Meredith stepped out from the house, wiping her hands on a towel like she'd just come from the kitchen. She paused when she saw us, immediately sensing the tension in the air. Her eyes shifted between me, Shelby, and finally my mom. "Everything okay out here?" she asked carefully. My mom crossed her arms, her voice tight. "We were just having a conversation. About my son." Aunt Meredith's gaze softened when she looked at me, standing there in my light blue skirt, flats, wig, and glittery shirt, frozen like I was caught in some embarrassing school play I couldn't escape from. "Claire," Aunt Meredith said gently, "he was just helping out. The family renting the venue needed a flower girl. The dress fit him. He agreed to help. It's not something we forced him into." My mom's jaw tightened. "That may be true, but this has clearly gone too far." "He's not hurting anyone," Aunt Meredith said calmly. "And if you'd seen how hard he's worked, how brave he's been about all of this." "He's a boy, Meredith," my mom interrupted, her voice sharper now. "He's standing in my face dressed like this, and it's not right. This isn't who he is." I flinched, the words cutting sharper than I was ready for. My mom turned her focus back to me. Her voice dropped to a stern tone I hadn't heard in a while, the voice that meant there was no room for argument. "Dylan," she said. "Go inside. Go to your room." I swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes. "Take off those girl clothes, put your regular clothes back on, and stay inside. We'll talk more later." I nodded weakly, my throat too tight to answer out loud. "And no more playing dress up," she added. "You're a boy. You shouldn't be wearing girls' clothes to begin with." That one hit hardest of all. I turned quietly, keeping my head down, and walked past Aunt Meredith and Shelby, the soft swish of my skirt feeling heavier with each step. The gravel crunched beneath my flats as I crossed the driveway and stepped inside the house. The familiar scent of my aunt's place hit me like a wave, warm and safe, but it didn't feel safe right now. By the time I reached my room, I felt my vision start to blur. I shut the door gently behind me, my breathing shaky. And as I stood there in my soft skirt, my flats, my wig still sitting perfectly in place. I felt my eyes start to water. My chest tightened. And I knew I was about to cry. I stood in the middle of the room, staring at the dresser across from me. The weight of everything felt like it was sitting on my chest. The skirt still swished softly against my legs with every tiny movement. The shirt clung to my shoulders and chest, the glittery design sparkling faintly under the light. The wig itched slightly where it met my scalp, but I barely noticed anymore. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears slipped down my cheeks, hot and silent, leaving faint trails that tickled as they reached my chin. I sniffled and wiped at my face quickly, like I could hide from myself. I didn't even know why I was crying exactly. I wasn't being punished. No one had screamed at me. But the way my mom looked at me. Like I was broken. Like I had done something wrong just by standing there. Like Zoe wasn't allowed to exist. I slowly crossed the room, pulling open the dresser drawer where my regular clothes sat, the boy clothes I hadn't touched since I started this. The jeans were rougher, heavier. The plain t-shirts felt stiff beneath my fingers compared to the soft cotton of Shelby's borrowed outfits. I set the clothes on the bed. Then I stood still for a moment, my hands shaking. I reached up first, finding the edge of the wig. My fingers slipped beneath the mesh cap and gently pulled it off my head. The weight lifted instantly, leaving my real hair flattened beneath. The brown waves hung limp in my hand as I set the wig carefully on the dresser, my breathing hitching as I did. Without the wig, I already felt more like Dylan again. But not in a way that made me feel better. Next, I grabbed the hem of the glittery blue shirt. I hesitated for a moment. Then I pulled it up and over my head. The cool air of the room hit my bare skin, sending a tiny shiver through me. I folded the shirt carefully, almost like I didn't want to hurt it, and set it beside the wig. The skirt came next. I reached for the waistband, slipping my fingers underneath the soft elastic. I pulled it down slowly, feeling the pleats glide down my legs until it pulled at my ankles like a fading memory. I stepped out of it gently and folded it as well. Now I stood in the blue floral underwear that came in the package that I bought yesterday. I stared down at them for a long moment. I could have changed those too. But I didn't. I didn't want to. The soft fabric still clung to me like the last thread of Zoe I was allowed to keep. And maybe I needed that, just for a little longer. Finally, I reached for the boy clothes, the familiar old jeans, heavier and stiffer as I pulled them up over my legs. The waistband pressed snugly over the soft, thin underwear beneath, making me feel both protected and strangely exposed at the same time. I tugged a plain t-shirt over my head next, loose, baggy, and a little rough on my skin after so many hours of soft fabric. When I looked at myself now, I looked like Dylan again. But I didn't feel like Dylan. I felt like someone who had just erased something fragile. I sat down heavily on the bed, my legs weak beneath me, wiping my face one last time as the tears finally slowed. Zoe was gone. For now. I sat there in silence, the weight of everything pressing down around me. The room felt too quiet now. Too empty. The jeans scratched against my legs when I shifted. The t-shirt hung loose on my shoulders. I kept pulling at the hem without even realizing it, my fingers searching for the soft edges of the skirt that weren't there anymore. The heaviness in my chest stayed. My eyes still stung from crying, but the tears had dried. And finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I whispered it out loud to no one. "What's so wrong with me wearing girls' clothes?" The words hung in the air for a moment, small but sharp, like I was daring the room to answer. But then, there was an answer. Because people think boys can't enjoy girls' clothes. The voice came from behind me. I turned, startled, and saw Shelby sitting on the windowsill, one leg tucked under her, the other dangling just inside the room. The window had been propped open, the screen carefully nudged aside. Her hair blew slightly in the breeze as she gave me a small, lopsided smile. "As Shelby!" I stammered. She shrugged like sneaking into my room was the most casual thing in the world. "Hey!" I blinked, still trying to catch up. "How did you?" Do they know you're up here? Shelby shook her head. Nope. My mom, your aunt, and your mom went into the store for a bit. I told them I was staying in the car to text someone. She grinned mischievously. Technically, I wasn't lying. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Of course she found a way up here. Of course she didn't want to leave me alone. Shelby's expression softened as she swung both legs through the window and dropped lightly onto the floor, walking toward me. And for the record, she said, sitting next to me on the bed, there's nothing wrong with you. I didn't answer. My throat was too tight again. She glanced down at my plain t-shirt, my jeans, the way I was sitting hunched over, twisting the fabric in my lap. You were amazing, Zoe, she said softly. You still are. I felt my lip tremble slightly at the name, at hearing it now, after everything. Zoe? I didn't correct her. Because part of me didn't want to let it go. Not yet. We sat there quietly for a moment, Shelby waiting patiently beside me. She didn't push, didn't say anything more. She just sat, her shoulder barely brushing mine, like she knew I needed space but wasn't going to leave. Finally, I took a shaky breath and spoke. I don't know who I am anymore. The words came out smaller than I expected. Shelby didn't interrupt. She just listened. I thought this was just pretend, I continued, my voice trembling. Just helping out for the wedding. A favor. I didn't think it would feel like this. I paused, trying to find the words. At first, it was weird. It felt wrong. Like I was doing something I wasn't supposed to. But then, after a while, it stopped feeling wrong. I started to like the way the dress felt. The way the skirt moved. The way the clothes made me feel. I looked down at my hands, still fidgeting with my jeans like I was trying to smooth out something that couldn't be fixed. And when I put on the wig, when I saw myself as Zoe, it felt like I fit. Like I was seeing someone I didn't even know was inside me. The tears started to build again, but this time I didn't fight them. But then my mom looked at me like I was broken. Like I did something wrong just because I liked it. And I don't know if that means something's wrong with me. I don't even know if I'm supposed to like it. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel better when I'm Zoe. My voice cracked, and the tears finally slipped down my cheeks again. But I do. Shelby's hand gently reached over and squeezed mine. There's nothing wrong with you, she whispered. I don't know if I'm supposed to be a girl or a boy, I said softly, my voice barely above a breath. I just know that being Zoe makes me feel safe, and happy, and scared, and right, and wrong, all at once. Shelby wiped my cheek gently with her sleeve. It's okay to feel all those things, she said quietly. It's okay not to have answers right now. Nobody's handing you a rulebook. I looked at her, my vision blurry, my throat tight. But what if my mom never understands? Shelby smiled sadly. Then we'll take it one step at a time. And you won't have to figure it out alone. And right then, sitting in my aunt's house in boy clothes, but still clinging to the last little piece of Zoe inside me, I finally let my tears fall without trying to stop them. Because maybe that was okay too. We sat there for a long time. Shelby didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. She just stayed there beside me, her hand wrapped around mine, her presence like an anchor in the middle of a storm I didn't know how to escape. The tears slowed eventually, but the weight in my chest stayed. And yet, in the quiet, in the stillness of that tiny room, something inside me settled just a little. I didn't have answers. I didn't know who I was supposed to be. But I knew I wasn't broken. Not because I liked the way the skirt swished, or the way the wig framed my face, or the way Shelby called me Zoe like it fit naturally in her mouth. I wasn't broken, I was just figuring it out. One confusing, scary, complicated step at a time. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 9: The Conversation. The house had been so quiet, I could hear every creak of the old wooden stairs outside my room. Footsteps. Getting closer. Shelby's head snapped up toward the door, her eyes wide. Without a word, she slid off the bed and ducked underneath it, vanishing into the narrow space like she'd done this 100 times before. Only the softest shuffle of the bedsheets gave any hint she was there. A gentle knock tapped against the door. Then my mom's voice came softly from the other side. "Dylan? Can I come in?" I swallowed, wiping my face quickly with the sleeve of my t-shirt. My heart was racing again, but not the same way as before. This time, it was more like standing at the edge of something fragile. "Yeah," I said quietly. The door opened slowly. She stepped inside, looking different than before. Not angry. Not stern. Just tired. Like she had spent the last hour wrestling with something inside her head. She closed the door gently behind her and walked a few steps closer, pausing near the dresser. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me. Her eyes landed briefly on the wig resting neatly on top of the dresser. Then the folded skirt. Then the carefully placed glittery shirt. All the pieces of Zoe, stacked neatly like they didn't belong in this room. Like they were waiting for permission to exist again. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "Dylan! I need to ask you something." I sat up straighter, my hands gripping the edge of the bed. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why were you dressed like a girl?" The question wasn't sharp this time. There was no accusation behind it. Just confusion. Worry. I opened my mouth, my throat tightening again. But I made myself answer. "Because it sounded fun." She blinked. "Fun?" I nodded slowly, my voice shaking just a little. Being the flower girl at the wedding seemed fun. They needed someone to help, and the dress fit me, and I thought it would be silly at first. Like a game. I paused, glancing at my hands in my lap. But then it didn't feel like just a game. My voice went even softer. It felt kind of nice. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, watching me carefully, her face unreadable. The silence stretched heavy between us. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And underneath the bed, Shelby stayed completely still. My mom shifted her weight slightly, folding her arms, not in anger, but like she was bracing herself for something. "Dylan," she said softly, "does wearing the girls' clothes, does it make you happy?" The question hung there, heavier than I expected. Happy? I hadn't even allowed myself to think about it in those exact words. I swallowed hard, my fingers twisting the fabric of my t-shirt. It kind of does," I whispered. "Not always. Sometimes it's scary. And confusing. But, yeah, it makes me feel safe. Like I don't have to try so hard. Like I'm allowed to just be." My voice cracked near the end, but I made myself keep eye contact this time. She closed her eyes briefly, taking in my words like she was trying to make sense of something completely foreign to her. When she opened them again, her voice grew even quieter. "Did your aunt make you do this? Or Shelby? Did anyone tell you that you had to wear the dress? Or be the flower girl? Or be a girl?" I shook my head quickly, my heart pounding. "No," I said firmly. "Nobody made me. Aunt Meredith asked if I'd be willing to help. Shelby's been helping me practice, but..." I said yes. I could have said no. I paused, breathing in a shaky breath. I wanted to try. My mom's face softened just slightly. And yet, behind her eyes, I could still see the storm of thoughts swirling, questions she wasn't ready to say out loud yet. But at least she was listening. At least she was trying. And for now, that was enough. My mom sat down beside me on the edge of the bed, her weight causing the mattress to dip slightly. For the first time all day, she wasn't standing above me. She was sitting next to me, right here. She rubbed her hands together for a moment before speaking again, her voice quieter now. "Look! Your father and I are still working through everything." She didn't need to say what everything meant. I knew. We both have a lot to figure out, she continued softly. And that's going to take time. So you're going to be staying here with your aunt a little longer, at least another week. I blinked. A whole week? She nodded. I came out all this way just to talk to you about that face to face. I didn't want you hearing it from your aunt first. I swallowed, unsure if I should feel nervous or relieved. Another week meant more time. More training. More. Zoe. She reached over and placed a gentle hand on mine. While you're here, you can keep helping with the wedding. You can be the flower girl. I blinked, my chest filling up with something warm. Really? She smiled faintly. Yes. But, she paused, when I get back, you and I are going to have some serious talks about all of this. About what this means for you. For us. For everything. I nodded quickly. Okay. Thank you, Mom. She squeezed my hand lightly before standing up. As she reached for the door, she paused and glanced back over her shoulder, her expression softening into something slightly amused. Oh! And tell Shelby, she said, raising an eyebrow, that she's not as clever as she thinks. I blinked, confused for a second, until she added with a knowing smirk, her mom says no more climbing trees in a skirt. For a moment, there was perfect silence. Then, from underneath my bed, a faint, defeated voice whispered. Dang it! I nearly snorted trying to hold back a laugh. My mom shook her head with a small, knowing smile and quietly pulled the door closed behind her. And for the first time since she arrived, I exhaled. Chapter 10 The Question. The door clicked softly as my mom left, and for a few long seconds, the room fell into stillness again. Then, from underneath the bed, came the soft shuffling of fabric, followed by Shelby's voice. Okay. Coast is clear. She wiggled her way out feet first, her hair slightly static and her skirt twisted from how long she'd been curled up in the cramped space. She sat up on her knees, brushing dust off her shirt, looking slightly victorious despite everything. That was intense, she whispered. I nodded quietly, my gaze drifting toward the dresser. The light blue skirt still lay neatly folded where my mom had set it down, the glittery heart on the shirt catching a bit of sunlight that peeked through the curtains. The wig sat beside them, its soft brown waves perfectly still. For a long moment, I just stared at them. I could feel Shelby watching me, but she didn't say anything right away. Finally, I broke the silence. I don't know if I want to keep doing this. My voice was barely above a whisper. Shelby sat back cross-legged on the bed, giving me space. Because of your mom? I shook my head a little, my throat tight. Because of me. I looked back down at my hands, picking at my fingers. When I first put on the dress, it was just for fun. Just for the wedding. And then, it started to feel like more. Like maybe it fit. Like maybe I fit. I swallowed. But now that my mom saw me like that, I don't know. What if this is too much? What if I'm just being stupid? Shelby leaned forward gently. You're not being stupid. I bit my lip. But what if I'm just confused? What if I'm not really supposed to like it? What if I'm making this harder than it needs to be? Shelby reached out and touched my hand softly. Or what if you're figuring out something important about yourself? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. I just kept staring at the soft, girly clothes sitting neatly on the dresser, like they were waiting for me to make a choice. Shelby let the silence hang for a few moments, her fingers still gently resting on my hand. Then she spoke softly, her voice calm but steady. Hey! Listen to me, okay? I glanced up at her, my throat still tight. You can do this, she said. You've already done the hard part. You've walked in the dress. You've practiced the petals. You've gone out in public. You even survived your mom seeing you, and she didn't flip out. I let out a small breath that was somewhere between a sigh and a nervous laugh. She smiled gently. The couple is counting on you. That pink dress only fits you, remember? If you don't do it, they won't have anyone to carry on that tradition. You're helping them, you're saving their wedding. I looked back at the dresser again. The soft pleats of the skirt. The shimmer of the glittery heart. The wig's gentle waves. I had never expected something like this to mean so much to anyone, especially not to me. Shelby squeezed my hand lightly. And yeah, maybe you're still figuring stuff out. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers today. But right now, all you have to do is be Zoe. Just for this weekend. I swallowed, my chest feeling tight but warm at the same time. She was right. I didn't know what this meant for the long run. But for now, I could do this. I wanted to do this. Slowly, I nodded. Okay, I whispered. I'll do it. Shelby grinned. That's my girl. My heart fluttered again at the way she said it, but this time, it didn't scare me. It felt nice. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling a little shaky but lighter than they had earlier. Shelby stepped back to give me space, her eyes soft and encouraging. I walked over to the dresser and gently picked up the folded skirt and shirt. The fabric was cool and smooth in my hands, familiar now, not nearly as foreign as it had felt the first time I touched it. The glittery heart on the shirt seemed to sparkle a little more in the morning light, almost like it was waiting for me to return to it. I glanced back at Shelby. I'll be right back. She nodded with a small smile. Take your time, Zoe. The name made my chest flutter again. But this time, it didn't bring panic. It brought something closer to peace. Inside the bathroom, I carefully laid the clothes down on the counter and pulled off my plain t-shirt. The rough fabric slipped away, leaving me bare from the waist up. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, short hair, flat chest, thin frame. Still Dylan. But not for long. I slipped the soft blue shirt over my head, feeling it settle against my skin like an old friend. The glittery heart landed perfectly over my chest, the fabric hugging me in a way that was light and comforting. Next came the skirt. I stepped into it slowly, pulling the waistband up to my waist. The soft pleats fell neatly to just above my knees, swishing gently as I shifted my weight. The soft swish, the lightness around my legs, it was all still there. But this time, it didn't feel strange. It felt right. Finally, I reached for the wig. My fingers carefully adjusted the cap, securing it in place before settling the soft brown waves around my face. The hair framed me again, transforming the reflection staring back. I wasn't Dylan anymore. I was Zoe. And as I stood there in front of the mirror, I took a deep breath and smiled, small, but real. When I stepped out of the bathroom, Shelby's eyes lit up immediately. There she is, she said proudly. Back and beautiful. I blushed, but this time I didn't look away. Thanks for not giving up on me, I whispered. She grinned. Never! Shelby grabbed my hand and grinned. Come on! I want to show you something before rehearsal. Still in my skirt and wig, I followed her outside. The morning air was crisp but warm enough to make my skirt swish lightly around my legs with every step. The barn stood tall and wide ahead of us, its big doors already propped open. Voices echoed faintly from inside, people already preparing for the first wedding of the weekend. We slipped in through a side door, carefully staying out of view. The air smelled like fresh sawdust, old wood, and flowers. I could hear chairs being moved, brooms sweeping, someone giving quiet instructions to a few staff members. Shelby led me along the side wall until we reached a wooden ladder, tucked between two support beams. Up here, she whispered, looking back at me with a mischievous grin. I stared at the ladder nervously. Are we even allowed up there? Technically? No. But nobody ever checks, she said with a wink. This has been my hiding spot forever. You'll love it. I hesitated, adjusting my wig slightly to keep it secure, then carefully climbed up behind her, one hand tightly gripping my skirt to keep it from snagging. The wooden ladder creaked softly as we ascended, the old boards cool under my flats. At the top was a narrow wooden beam walkway nestled between the high rafters. Shelby crawled across easily, motioning for me to follow. The wood was dusty but sturdy, and I moved slowly, making sure not to let my skirt drag too much. Finally, we reached her spot. We were perched high above the main barn floor, looking straight down at the entire auditorium-like setup. Rows of white pews were being wiped down, flower arrangements were being placed along the aisle, and workers were mopping and polishing every surface. The vaulted ceilings let soft beams of sunlight filter through the high windows, casting everything below in a warm, golden glow. It was beautiful. I stared in awe, quietly taking it all in. "This is where I always come when I want to be alone," Shelby whispered beside me, sitting cross-legged on the beam. "I can watch everything from up here and nobody ever notices. It's amazing." I breathed, my voice barely audible. "It looks so different from up here. Right?" she said, nudging me lightly with her shoulder. "You can watch rehearsal from here, too. It's a perfect view." I looked at her, confused for a second. "Wait, you mean you're leaving?" She nodded. "Yeah. My rehearsal's about to start, the Mackenzies wanted super private. Only the bridal party's allowed. No extra people." "Oh," I said softly, suddenly feeling the nerves return for a moment. "So I just stay here?" "Exactly," she said with a reassuring smile. "Watch from up here. Stay out of sight. I'll come get you when we're done." I nodded, my hands gripping the beam tightly as I glanced down again at the people buzzing below like little ants getting everything perfect. "You'll be fine," Shelby whispered, squeezing my hand briefly before carefully crawling back toward the ladder. As she disappeared from view, I was left sitting in the quiet rafters alone. Just me. Zoe. Watching from above. I sat perfectly still on the rafters, my back pressed gently against one of the old wooden beams. The skirt swished softly around my legs every time I shifted, but I tried not to move too much. From up here, I could see everything without anyone noticing me. The workers finished cleaning the pews and left one by one, their voices fading until the barn grew quieter. Soon after, I saw Shelby reappear near the front of the aisle, now wearing one of her flower girl dresses, pale yellow, the one I'd seen her try on just a couple days ago. She looked calm, confident, almost like she belonged here more than anyone. The Mackenzies stood nearby, the bride and groom-to-be, along with a few bridesmaids and groomsmen gathering for rehearsal. The wedding coordinator pointed people into place while the bride quietly conferred with Shelby, bending down to adjust her dress and smiling warmly. Even from up here, I could see Shelby's easy smile and how at home she seemed in her role. No nerves. No hesitation. Just Shelby being Shelby. For a moment, I felt that same strange mixture in my chest again, pride, envy, and something I still couldn't quite name. That's supposed to be me soon, I thought. I hugged my knees to my chest as I continued to watch the rehearsal play out like a silent movie far beneath me. Voices echoed upward, but I couldn't make out full words. Just laughter, soft instructions, and the occasional burst of applause as the wedding party ran through their practice walk. I was so focused on watching Shelby that I didn't hear the faint creak behind me. Didn't feel the shift of the old wooden boards under someone else's weight. Didn't notice the quiet footsteps crossing the rafters, growing closer. Not until I suddenly felt the faintest rush of air behind me. A voice, calm and close, broke the silence. "Well now! What do we have here?" My whole body stiffened. And my breath caught. Chapter 11, Caught. My heart slammed against my chest as I froze in place. The voice behind me was close, too close, and before I could even react, a hand gently but firmly slid over my mouth, cutting off the small gasp that tried to escape my throat. "Shh!" the voice whispered. I stiffened, breathing hard through my nose, my pulse racing like I'd been caught doing something I wasn't supposed to. My mind spun as I tried to figure out who was behind me, until I heard the voice again, softer this time. "It's okay, Zoe. Don't freak out." "Zoe?" My stomach twisted. He didn't know. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head as much as I could, feeling his hand release slightly once he realized I wasn't going to scream. "Ethan?" He crouched behind me on the wooden beam, his face lit by the soft sunlight filtering through the rafters. His eyes weren't angry or suspicious, they were excited, like this was all some kind of game. "What are you doing up here?" he whispered with a grin. "I almost didn't see you." I opened my mouth to answer, but my throat was dry. I forced myself to stay calm, remembering that as far as he knew, I was still Zoe. I was just watching," I whispered back, my voice quiet and soft, trying my best to keep it light, keep it girly. "Shelby brought me up here earlier. Said it was a secret spot." Ethan smirked, glancing down at the wedding rehearsal below. "Yeah. This is a good spot. I used to come up here too when I was little. Pretty cool, huh?" I nodded quickly, trying not to let my nerves show. My hands gripped the beam tightly, my palms slightly damp. My skirt shifted lightly with the breeze sneaking through the cracks in the barn, the soft pleats brushing my legs again as a reminder of who I was pretending to be right now. "Zoe? Not Dylan." Ethan shifted his weight and leaned a little closer, lowering his voice even more. "Don't tell anyone I snuck up here, okay? I'm supposed to be helping move tables." I nodded again, still barely able to breathe. He chuckled quietly. "Thanks. You're cool, Zoe." My stomach flipped. And somehow, I managed a tiny, breathless smile. Ethan settled in beside me on the beam, sitting cross-legged like Shelby had earlier. The old wood creaked softly beneath us, but it felt sturdy enough. My heart was still racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. Down below, the rehearsal was still going. Shelby stood near the front, walking slowly down the aisle, practicing her pedal toss. She had a little basket in her hand, carefully scooping out the pink and white petals one handful at a time, letting them float gracefully to the floor. "She's really good at that," Ethan whispered beside me. I nodded, keeping my voice soft. "Yeah. She's done a lot of weddings, she told me once she's done like... what? 8? 9? Ethan chuckled under his breath. "She's practically a professional flower girl." I smiled faintly, watching Shelby spin a little at the end of the aisle before walking back to reset. She made it look so easy, like walking, smiling, and tossing petals was something she was born to do. Like it was nothing. And soon, I'd have to do the same. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, glancing at me again. "You nervous for your turn?" I stiffened a little at the question, but nodded. "A little." He smiled kindly. "Don't worry. You'll be fine. I mean, you're already wearing the dress and everything. That's probably the scariest part." I felt my cheeks warm. The breeze shifted again, making my skirt flutter softly around my legs as if to remind me how real all of this still was. "Yeah," I said quietly. "The dress was definitely a big step." Ethan grinned again. "You pull it off though. You look really nice." My stomach flipped, but I smiled anyway, trying not to panic. "Thanks." We both looked down at Shelby again, who was now practicing her walk while two of the bridesmaids adjusted the flower arrangements nearby. "I bet you'll do even better than her," Ethan whispered, nudging me lightly with his elbow. "Just don't trip." I let out a quiet, nervous laugh. "I'll try." For a few moments, we just sat there, two kids hiding in the rafters, watching the grown-up world below spin in careful rehearsed circles. And for the first time since I started this, I felt like maybe I could actually pull this off. We sat there in silence for a while longer, just watching. But then Ethan shifted his weight, moving slightly to get more comfortable. The old wooden beam creaked loudly under him, and without meaning to, his elbow bumped into me, not hard, but just enough. My body jerked in surprise. And that was all it took. The wig slipped. In a split second, I felt it loosen, slide back, and tumble off completely, landing softly on the wooden beam beside me like a fallen hat. My breath caught. The cool air rushed over my exposed, flattened real hair, short, messy, unmistakably boy hair. Time froze. Ethan's eyes went wide. His mouth opened slightly, blinking like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His voice came out in a sharp, terrified whisper. Why you're a boy?" My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might shake the whole barn. My hands scrambled to grab the wig, my fingers shaking as I yanked it back onto my head as quickly as I could. But it was too late. Ethan had seen everything. Panic surged through me like a crashing wave. Without thinking, I scrambled up onto my knees, then onto my feet, wobbling slightly on the narrow beam. Ethan reached out like he wanted to say something, maybe even to stop me, but I couldn't hear him over the rush of my own breath. I couldn't stay. Not here. Not after this. Without a word, I turned and hurried along the beam, heart racing, skirt swishing wildly around my legs as I made my way back to the ladder. My flats made soft tapping sounds as I moved as quickly, and carefully, as I could. I didn't stop. Didn't look back. Didn't want to see Ethan's face again. All I could think about was getting out. I clambered down the ladder, hit the barn floor, and broke into a quick, panicked walk toward the side door, clutching the wig tightly to my head as it shifted from the rushed climb. By the time I stepped outside, I was trembling. The warm air hit me like a wall as I hurried back across the gravel toward Aunt Meredith's house. I needed to get inside. I needed to hide. I needed to breathe. Chapter 12 Breathe. My feet barely touched the ground as I hurried across the yard, my heart still pounding in my chest. The house felt like the only safe place right now, a refuge from the confusion and fear that had just exploded in the barn. I reached the front steps and quickly slipped inside, the door closing behind me with a soft click. My room was just down the hall, and I made a beeline for it, my hands still trembling as I turned the doorknob. But as I stepped inside, I glanced back through the window and saw Ethan following me at a distance. He looked cautious, unsure, but determined. He had seen everything, and now there was no turning back. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, knowing that I would have to face him sooner or later. I closed the door behind me, my hands shaking as I leaned against it, my breathing still uneven. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air no matter how deeply I tried to breathe. The weight of what just happened came crashing down all at once. He knew. He knew. The tears came before I could stop them. I stumbled over to the bed and collapsed onto it, burying my face into the pillow. My skirt shifted around my legs as I curled up tight, trying to make myself small. The wig slipped slightly on my head again, but I didn't care anymore. I just needed to disappear. Hot tears soaked the pillow as quiet sobs escaped my throat. Everything felt ruined. Exposed. And then... click! The door handle turned. I sat up quickly, wiping my face with the back of my hand, but my eyes were still wet and puffy. Ethan stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. He stood there for a moment, awkward and unsure, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. His face was pale, eyes wide, but not angry. Just confused. "Zoe?" he said softly, still using the only name he knew. "Hey! It's okay! Please don't cry!" I sniffled, my voice catching. You weren't supposed to find out." Ethan stepped a little closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't know." He sat down slowly at the foot of the bed, leaving plenty of space between us like he wasn't sure how close he was allowed to be. "I'm not mad," he said gently. I don't understand. Why are you dressed like a girl?" I looked down at my lap, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of my skirt. There it was again, the same question my mom had asked. The question I still didn't fully know how to answer. I wiped my eyes again, trying to steady my breathing. My voice trembled, but I made myself speak. I don't want to be a girl. Not forever. Not really." Ethan stayed quiet, listening, his brow furrowed but not judging. "It's just... this started because of the wedding," I continued, my words coming out slowly, carefully, like I was still trying to understand them myself as I spoke. "They needed someone to be the flower girl. The dress fit me. And at first, it was just supposed to be for fun. Just a favor. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. But once I started doing it, once I put on the dress and the wig, and practiced, and learned everything, it started to feel, I don't know, right? Comfortable, I guess. Ethan's eyes softened a little. He nodded slowly, not interrupting. I don't want to be a girl every day, I whispered. But when I'm Zoe, it feels nice. It feels safe. Like I can relax for once. I looked up at him, my voice barely a whisper now. Is that weird? He shook his head gently. No. It's not weird. For the first time since he'd entered the room, I saw something shift in his face, like something was finally clicking. You're doing it for them, he said softly, nodding toward the barn, and for you. I nodded. Yeah. We sat there in silence for a few moments, the weight of everything still heavy but lighter now that I had finally said it out loud. Ethan let out a small breath, rubbing the back of his neck. You're braver than me, Zoe. I let out a weak, teary laugh. I don't feel brave. You are. His voice was quiet, honest. I mean, you're wearing a dress and pulling it off better than half the girls I know. And you're doing it in front of a whole wedding. That's pretty brave. I smiled for real this time, the tension slowly starting to loosen in my chest. Ethan smiled back. And, you still look really nice, by the way. My face flushed. I looked down quickly, my fingers fidgeting with the hem of my skirt again, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was something else. Something warm. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was softer now, like the storm had finally passed. Ethan shifted a little closer on the bed, still keeping his voice quiet. You don't have to worry. I won't tell anyone. I looked up, surprised. Really? He nodded firmly. Yeah. I mean, it's not anyone else's business, right? You're doing this for the wedding. And if it makes you feel good too, even a little, then that's between you and the people who care about you. Not anyone else. His words hit me harder than I expected. In a good way. The weight on my chest lightened a little more. Thank you, I whispered, my voice cracking slightly. Ethan gave me a small grin. Besides, I think you're kind of awesome for even trying this. I wouldn't have the guts. I let out a small laugh, wiping the last of my tears from my cheeks. You're not freaked out? He shook his head. A little surprised, yeah. But freaked out? No. You're still. Well, you. I smiled at that, a real, full smile this time. Ethan glanced around the room and lowered his voice even more. So, do you want me to call you Zoe or Dylan? The question caught me off guard. For a second, I hesitated, but then I answered softly, for now. Zoe's okay. Ethan grinned. Okay, Zoe. And for the first time that day, hearing him say it didn't scare me. It felt right. Chapter 13. About an hour later, the air outside had warmed under the afternoon sun. The earlier nerves had settled, though little bits of anxiety still buzzed faintly under my skin. But I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't hiding. Ethan and I stepped out into the yard, walking slowly side by side. The gravel crunched softly beneath our shoes, his sneakers, my flats. The skirt swayed lightly around my legs with every step. The breeze tugged at the pleats gently, and I reached down instinctively to smooth it, more out of habit than fear now. I was still in girls' clothes. Still Zoe. And Ethan walked beside me like it was nothing. He didn't stare. He didn't act weird. He didn't even bring it up again after our talk in my room. It was like he just accepted it. We wandered toward the edge of the property near the large oak tree that overlooked the barn. From here, we could see people still bustling around inside as the final touches were made after rehearsal. Shelby should be done soon, Ethan said, glancing toward the barn. I heard them say they were only running through everything once. I nodded. Yeah. She said she'd come find us after. The warm breeze picked up again, and for a moment, we both stood quietly, watching from a distance as the workers rearranged chairs and brought out floral centerpieces for tomorrow's wedding. It felt strange, standing out here in my skirt, still wearing the wig, completely exposed. But I wasn't panicking anymore. Not like before. Ethan glanced over at me. "You're doing better?" I smiled a little, glancing down at myself, my voice soft. "I guess I am. You're actually kind of natural at this." I gave a shy little laugh, feeling my face warm again. "Thanks." We stood there for a little while longer, letting the silence settle between us, not uncomfortable, but easy. Just waiting. We didn't have to wait long. The barn doors creaked open, and Shelby came strolling out, her rehearsal dress gone. She was back in her casual clothes now, a simple pink t-shirt and a soft denim skirt that swayed slightly as she walked. Her ponytail bounced with each step, and she had the usual easy, confident grin on her face. "There you guys are!" she called, skipping up to us. "Rehearsal went great. The McKinseys didn't even freak out once." She stopped in front of us, glancing between me and Ethan, her smile bright but curious. "So, what have you two been up to?" I hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who gave me a tiny nod of encouragement. Taking a breath, I looked back at Shelby. He knows." Shelby's eyes widened slightly. "He knows?" "Yeah," Ethan added quickly, raising his hands a little. "It wasn't on purpose, I swear, it just kind of happened." Shelby's gaze flicked between the two of us, reading our faces carefully. Then she crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow at Ethan. "And you're cool with it?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah. I mean, it was a surprise. But it's cool." Shelby let out a long breath, then smiled. "Good. Because if you weren't, I was fully prepared to push you into the pond." Ethan laughed. "Noted." Shelby turned back to me, her eyes softening. "You okay?" I nodded, my voice quiet but steady. "Yeah. I think I am." She smiled. "Good. Because you've come way too far to fall apart now." The three of us stood there for a moment, the afternoon breeze dancing around us, the barn standing tall in the distance. For the first time all day, everything felt light, safe, even fun. Shelby rocked back on her heels, smiling. "Hey, you guys want to go for a swim? It's hot, and the pond's perfect right now." I immediately perked up at the idea. After everything today, the thought of floating in cool water sounded amazing. "Yeah! That sounds great!" Ethan glanced at his phone and made a face. "I wish I could, but my dad needs me to finish moving some stuff for tomorrow's setup. If I disappear any longer, he'll probably come looking for me." Shelby waved him off. "Fair enough. We'll swim extra for you." Ethan gave us both a grin, glanced at me one more time, and for the first time, I noticed how casual and easy his smile looked, even after everything, then jogged off toward the barn. Shelby turned to me. "Come on! Let's grab our stuff!" We headed toward the house together, chatting idly about her rehearsal as we walked. When we got inside, I started toward my room. "I'll just grab my swim trunks real quick," I said over my shoulder, reaching for my dresser drawer. But Shelby stepped in front of me, blocking the way with a mischievous smile. "Actually, you won't need those." I blinked. "What?" She held up the bag of girl clothes that she let me borrow. Inside, neatly folded, was a bright pink and light blue bikini, simple, but very much girls' swimwear. "I packed this for you," she said brightly. I stared at it like it might explode. "Shelby, I can't wear that." "Yes, you can," she said gently. "It'll fit you. And nobody's going to see us over there. The pond's completely private right now." "But I can't wear my wig while swimming," I pointed out, my voice tight with nerves. "What if someone sees me without it? My hair?" She smiled even softer this time. "You don't need the wig. It's just us. No one's going to be out there, I promise. And besides," she added playfully, "you already look soft enough without it, I swallowed hard, my stomach doing nervous little flips. But, no buts, Zoe. She grinned. You've trusted me this far, haven't you? I hesitated, my fingers trembling slightly as I looked at the bikini in her hand. The fabric looked soft, light, summery, and terrifying. But under all the fear, somewhere deep inside, was that same strange little warmth again. I was scared. But maybe, I wanted to try. Just for now. Okay, I whispered. Shelby beamed. Atta girl. I stood in the bathroom, the door locked behind me, the plastic bag Shelby had handed me sitting on the counter. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out the bikini and unfolded it. The top was a soft pink with thin blue trim along the edges, simple triangle cups and thin straps. The bottoms matched, light blue with the same soft pink accents. They felt so small and delicate in my hands. So different! I stared at myself in the mirror for a moment, taking a breath as my reflection looked back, still in my light blue skirt and glittery heart shirt, still wearing the wig. But not for long. First, I carefully took off the wig and set it on the counter. My short hair flattened underneath, making me feel a little more exposed again. Still, I reminded myself, no one was going to see but Shelby. And somehow, knowing that helped. I slowly undressed, folding the skirt and shirt neatly on the counter. Finally, I reached for the bikini bottoms. The fabric was smooth and stretchy, cool against my skin as I stepped into them and pulled them up gently. They fit snugly but comfortably, hugging my hips and sitting just right across my stomach. The sensation was completely different than any swim trunks I'd ever worn, lighter, more form-fitting, and somehow softer. Next came the top. I slipped my arms through the thin straps and carefully fastened the back. The light cups rested gently against my flat chest. The straps pulled softly against my shoulders, holding the bikini top securely in place, framing my body in a way that felt entirely unfamiliar, but not wrong. I caught sight of myself in the mirror again and froze. There I was, no wig, no dress, no skirt, but still very much Zoe. The bikini fit. The colors were bright, fun, and summery. The top sat flat against my chest but still gave me the unmistakable shape of a girl's swimsuit. The bottoms hugged my waist gently, the thin fabric fluttering slightly as I shifted. I ran my hands nervously along the waistband, feeling how smooth and light it was. The air kissed my bare shoulders and legs, making me feel both exposed and strangely free. I didn't know what I expected to feel. But standing there, for the first time, I wasn't panicking. I was nervous, yes. But part of me was curious, maybe even a little excited. I took a deep breath and whispered to my reflection, just to hear it out loud. You're Zoe! And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was lying. I opened the bathroom door slowly, my bare feet cool against the wooden floor. Shelby was waiting just outside, sitting cross-legged on the bed, grinning the moment she saw me. Her eyes lit up. Oh my gosh, Zoe, you look adorable! I blushed instantly, folding my arms over my stomach and shifting my weight as the bikini hugged my body. It feels weird. Good weird or bad weird? She asked with a teasing smile. I hesitated, then gave a little shrug. Mostly weird. Shelby stood up and held out something else, one of her sundresses, a light white one with pale blue flowers scattered across it. The fabric was soft and flowy, like a thin cover-up. Here, she said. You probably feel better walking over there like this. Grateful, I slipped it over my head. The lightweight fabric floated gently over the bikini, adding a layer that somehow made me feel a little less exposed. The hem stopped just above my knees, and the breeze already made it flutter softly as we stepped outside. As we walked across the yard toward the pond, Shelby was practically bouncing. The sunlight hit her ponytail as she twirled once, clearly loving every second of it. You know, she said, girl swimsuits are just so much better. I glanced over at her, still tugging nervously at the edge of the sundress as it swayed with every step. Better how? Lighter, cuter, more fun, she said with a little spin. You feel pretty in them. They don't get heavy like trunks do when they're wet, and they dry faster too. I made a small face. Yeah, but trunks feel normal. Safe. Not like I'm showing everything. She giggled. You're not showing everything. I feel like I am. Shelby bumped her shoulder gently into mine as we walked. I know. But trust me, you're pulling it off. And besides, no one's gonna see us. I took a deep breath, trying to focus on the quiet of the pond ahead, the sparkling water glistening in the sun, the trees swaying gently around it, the peaceful little hideaway that, for now, belonged only to us. The nervous flutter in my stomach stayed, but under it, I couldn't deny a small spark of excitement too. A strange kind of freedom. Even if part of me still wished I was wearing my swim trunks. The path opened up into a small clearing as we reached the pond. The surface shimmered under the sun, little ripples dancing across the water. The trees circled around it like a secret wall, tall and quiet. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of birds somewhere in the distance. Shelby dropped her towel near the dock and stretched her arms above her head. Perfect! I stood there for a moment, my bare feet sinking slightly into the soft grass beneath me. The sundress fluttered gently against my legs in the breeze. My nerves started creeping back in, tightening my stomach as I stared at the water. Shelby turned to me, noticing my hesitation. You okay? She asked softly. Yeah, I whispered. Just. Still feels weird. She smiled gently. It's just us. And once you're in the water, you'll forget all about it. I promise. I nodded slowly, reaching for the thin straps of the sundress. With one small breath, I pulled it up and over my head, folding it neatly and setting it beside Shelby's towel. Now I stood there fully exposed in the bikini, the soft breeze brushing against my bare shoulders and legs. The thin fabric hugged my body in a way that still felt new, the snugness of the top, the light hug of the bottoms. My skin tingled under the sun. Shelby offered me a warm, encouraging smile before walking down the dock and diving into the water with a splash. Come on! She called, treading water effortlessly. You've got this, Zoe! I took another breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and stepped slowly toward the water's edge. The first step into the pond sent a chill up my spine as the cool water wrapped around my ankles. I shivered slightly, but kept going. Step after step, the water rose up my calves, my knees, my thighs, the bikini bottom staying snug against my hips. The coolness was shocking but refreshing. By the time the water reached my stomach, I paused, hugging my arms around myself, feeling the lightness of the bikini top floating slightly with the water's movement. One more step and I was fully in. I dipped down gently, letting the water wash over my shoulders, my head tilting back as I floated for a moment. The sun warmed my face while the cool water cooled my skin. And just like Shelby promised, for a few perfect moments, I forgot all about the bikini. I forgot about the nerves, the fear, the wig, the secrets. I was just floating. Free. Zoe. And it felt wonderful. Shelby grinned at me from a few feet away. See? Not so bad, huh? I smiled back, my heart finally calm. Not bad at all. We floated there for a while, the water rocking us gently as the sunlight danced across the rippling surface. The breeze was light, the world quiet. Just us in the pond. Then Shelby spoke, her voice soft and curious. Do you think you'll ever want to be Zoe again after the wedding? You know, like for real? The question made my chest tighten a little, even though she said it so gently. I knew Shelby wasn't pushing, she was just being honest, like she always was. I stared up at the bright blue sky for a moment before answering, my voice quiet, thoughtful. I don't know, I admitted. I mean, it's been nice. Scary, but nice. Being Zoe feels safe. But I looked over at her, floating nearby, her eyes waiting patiently for my answer. I don't live here, I continued softly. Once my parents figure out their divorce stuff, I'll be heading back to the city. Back home, Shelby's smile faded just a little, but she nodded like she understood. Yeah. I guess I kinda forgot about that. I let out a small breath. And back there, none of this would make sense. I don't even know how I'd explain it. I barely know how to explain it to myself. Shelby swirled the water around her with her hand, sending little ripples between us. Well, she said after a moment, even if it's just for here, for now. You've been amazing at it. I smiled faintly, my voice barely a whisper. Thanks. And, she added, perking up a bit, we still have a wedding to nail first. I laughed under my breath, feeling the tension in my chest ease a little. Yeah! Let's survive that first! We both floated there quietly for a moment longer, the water cradling us, as the soft breeze carried the weight of everything just a little farther away. Shelby and I were still drifting lazily near the edge of the pond when we heard footsteps crunching through the grass behind us. Shelby? A familiar voice called. We both turned to see her mom standing at the top of the little hill, hand on her hip, squinting into the sun. It's time to go, sweetie! We've got errands and laundry, and you still haven't unpacked from the last wedding. Shelby groaned, floating on her back. 5 more minutes? Her mom raised an eyebrow. Now! Shelby sighed dramatically and turned to me with a grin. Duty calls! We both waded toward the shore, the cool water sliding off our skin. I felt the bikini cling tighter to me as I walked, but I wasn't nearly as self-conscious now. It just felt like part of me. Shelby tossed me my sundress from where it had been folded neatly on the grass. Here! I pulled it over my head quickly, the soft fabric slipping down easily, covering the snug swimsuit in one light motion. Then I reached for my wig and gently adjusted it back into place, brushing a few loose strands behind my ears. Within seconds, Zoe was back. We walked together toward the gravel driveway where her mom's car was parked. I trailed just a step behind as Shelby tossed her towel in the back seat. You coming to practice tomorrow? She asked, turning back to me. Yeah, I said, tucking a bit of wig hair behind my ear. Wouldn't miss it. Shelby grinned, you're gonna crush it. I watched as she climbed into the car, waved once through the window, and pulled the door shut. Her mom gave me a polite smile and nod before pulling out of the driveway, the tires crunching softly on the gravel. I stood there for a moment, sundress fluttering in the breeze, watching the car until it disappeared around the bend. Then I turned and headed back toward the house, my flats quiet on the wooden porch steps. When I stepped inside, I didn't expect anyone to be there. But as I turned the corner into the dining room, I stopped dead in my tracks. There they were! My aunt and my mom! Sitting at the dining room table! Waiting! And both of them looked up at me at the exact same time. Chapter 14 The Countdown. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall behind me. My heart pounded as both my mom and Aunt Meredith looked up at me standing there in the sundress, my wig perfectly in place, the soft fabric still slightly damp from the pond. For a moment, none of us said anything. Then my mom smiled softly, not like before, when she was trying to hide her confusion or worry. This time, it was different. Gentler. Even a little amused. You look really cute in that dress, she said softly. I blinked, caught off guard. My cheeks instantly flushed, and I instinctively tugged at the hem of the sundress. Thanks, I mumbled. I was at the pond with Shelby. She nodded like she already knew. Aunt Meredith gave me a small wink from across the table. Then, for some reason I couldn't fully explain, I added nervously, I'm still wearing the bikini underneath. My mom raised an eyebrow but didn't look upset. Well, I suppose that's what Shelby had in mind when she packed it for you. I gave a tiny embarrassed nod, shifting my weight from one foot to the other. My mom glanced at Aunt Meredith briefly, then back at me, her expression softening even more. Dylan, she started, her voice calm, we've talked a lot today, and I think we've both had some time to think about everything. I swallowed hard, feeling my stomach twist a little, bracing for whatever came next. We'll be heading back home on Monday morning, she continued gently. The wedding will be over, and your dad and I have some things we need to settle back in the city." I nodded slowly, my chest tightening just a bit. "Monday. Just a few days left." She gave me a small smile. "That gives you time to finish what you started here. To help with the wedding. To be Zoe. And when we get home, we'll figure everything else out. Together?" Her voice was steady, but I could hear the unspoken part. She still didn't fully understand all of this, but she was trying. And for now, that was enough. "Okay," I whispered. "Thank you." My aunt gave me an encouraging smile, and for a moment, the three of us just sat in that quiet, complicated, fragile sort of peace. For now, things were okay. I climbed the stairs to my room, my feet light on the steps, the hem of the sundress swaying gently around my legs as I went. My chest still felt tight, not from fear exactly, but from everything swirling inside my head. Monday. Only a few days left. I closed the door behind me and carefully pulled the sundress off, folding it neatly and placing it on the bed. My fingers paused on the thin bikini straps at my shoulders, and after a brief moment, I slipped them down and carefully removed the bikini top and bottoms too, setting them aside. Standing there for a moment in just my underwear, I turned toward the bag Shelby had left me, her Zoe bag, as she called it. I unzipped it slowly and dug through the carefully folded clothes. My fingers brushed past a few dresses, a couple of skirts, some sparkly tops. Then landed on something that felt surprisingly me. A denim ruffle skirt. It was short, but not too short, with soft layered ruffles that made it look playful and casual. Next to it was a pink tank top with little ruffles along the straps and neckline, a tiny bow stitched at the center of the chest. I held them up for a second, my heart racing again, but in a softer way this time. Without thinking too much, I stepped into the skirt first, pulling it up around my waist. It hugged my hips gently, the ruffles swaying with every small move I made. Then I slipped the tank top over my head, adjusting the ruffles so they sat evenly across my shoulders. I glanced at the mirror. There she was again. Zoe. No wig. No dress. Just a tank top, a ruffle skirt, and me. Still me. Still complicated. But somehow, this didn't feel wrong. Taking a breath, I stepped out of my room and headed back downstairs. When I reached the dining room again, my mom and Aunt Meredith both looked up from their conversation. The moment my mom saw me, I saw that familiar flicker in her eyes. That tiny flash of surprise, confusion, even discomfort. But she didn't say anything right away. Her gaze traveled slowly from the pink ruffled tank top to the denim skirt, to my bare legs, then back to my face. I fidgeted a little under her stare, tugging at the hem of the skirt. Shelby packed a lot of stuff." My aunt smiled warmly, trying to ease the tension. "Looks like Shelby's taste fits you just fine." My mom forced a small smile, but I could see the conflict still lingering behind her eyes. "It's just still strange for me, that's all," she admitted softly. "Seeing my son like this." I swallowed, my heart sinking just a bit, but I nodded. "I know." She looked at me for a long moment, her voice a little shaky. "But you do look very nice." My breath caught at that. I gave a small, grateful smile. "Thanks, Mom." We sat there in the quiet for a moment, everyone trying to settle into this strange, delicate space we were all still figuring out. One step at a time. After a while, Aunt Meredith excused herself, leaving my mom and me sitting together in the quiet dining room. The silence stretched, but it wasn't as heavy as before. Then my mom glanced toward the window and softly asked, "Do you want to go for a little walk? Just you and me?" I nodded, standing up quietly. "Sure." We stepped outside into the warm afternoon air. The sky was still clear, streaked with soft blues and oranges as the sun started its slow descent. A light breeze ruffled my skirt as we walked together toward the open grounds surrounding the barn. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and flowers from the arrangements being set up nearby. For a while, neither of us spoke. My mom seemed to be gathering her thoughts as we walked side by side, her hands clasped lightly in front of her. I kept fiddling with the hem of my skirt, my nerves still quietly fluttering beneath my skin, though not nearly as bad as before. Finally, she spoke softly. "You know, this place used to look very different." I glanced up at her, curious. "Before it was a wedding venue," she continued, her voice gentle and distant, "this was your great-grandmother's farm. My grandmother. I used to come out here every summer when I was a little girl." I blinked. "I didn't know that." She smiled faintly, a little sad but warm. "Back then, there was no barn like this. Just fields and a small old barn for the animals. No fancy flower beds or gazebos. Just rows of corn, a few horses, and this huge swing my grandpa tied up between those two trees over there." She pointed across the field to two tall oaks that still stood proudly, swaying slightly in the breeze. "I used to spend hours swinging there, pretending I was flying," she said with a small laugh. "We didn't have much, but I loved it out here. It always felt safe." I glanced over at the trees, trying to picture her here, younger than me, hair flying in the wind as she swung back and forth. She grew quiet for a moment, then added, "It's strange being back now. It feels so different, but also the same, somehow. Just dressed up in different clothes, I guess." I looked down at myself, the pink ruffled tank top, the denim skirt, and couldn't help but smile faintly. "Kind of like me." She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head gently. "Yeah. Kind of like you." We kept walking, the gravel crunching beneath our feet. "I never would have imagined that my son would be walking these fields wearing a skirt and ruffles," she said softly, but not unkindly. "And I won't pretend I understand everything going on inside your head right now, Dylan. Or Zoe." I swallowed, feeling my heart catch again when she said both names together. "But I do know that you're still my child. And you're still safe here." Her voice wavered slightly near the end, but she reached over and gently squeezed my hand. I held onto her hand a little tighter than I expected. "Thanks, Mom," I whispered. And for a little while longer, we just walked, the two of us, under the same sky her grandmother had once looked up at, figuring things out together, one slow step at a time. We walked in silence for a while longer, both of us quietly lost in our own thoughts, when a cool breeze swept through the field, stronger this time. The sky darkened slightly, and I noticed the trees beginning to sway more as faint rumbles of thunder echoed far off in the distance. A few seconds later, I felt the first raindrop hit my shoulder. Then another. And another. Within moments, the soft drizzle turned into a quick, steady rain, tapping down around us and dotting my skirt with little dark spots. My mom glanced up at the sky, wide-eyed. "Oh no, come on!" We both broke into a run without thinking, heading back toward the house as the rain picked up. My skirt swished wildly with every step, sticking slightly to my legs as it grew damp. My mom's hair frizzed in the growing humidity, but she was laughing, and so was I. For the first time in days, I felt light. Free. The rain soaked through my tank top as we dashed up onto the porch, both of us breathless, water dripping from our clothes and hair. We reached the door, laughing as we caught our breath, both drenched but smiling wide. "Well," my mom said through a laugh, brushing wet hair out of her face, "that was unexpected." I wiped water from my cheeks, still giggling. "At least we made it before it really poured." She nodded, smiling down at me, and for a moment there was no awkwardness, no tension, just us. Mother and child. Laughing. Together? She opened the door and ushered me inside, both of us dripping water across the wooden floor as the rain hammered harder on the roof above us. We were both still catching our breath in the front entryway when Aunt Meredith came around the corner from the kitchen, carrying a large tray loaded with dinner, baked chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh bread. She took one look at us, soaked, dripping puddles onto her hardwood floors, and raised an eyebrow. "Well, I see you two decided to take the scenic route," she said with a teasing smile. My mom chuckled, brushing water off her sleeves. The rain caught us. Aunt Meredith set the tray down on the dining room table and shook her head playfully. You both better get dried off before you track any more of that rainwater through my house. I just cleaned these floors. We're going, my mom said with a laugh, giving a little wave as she slipped off her damp sandals. I quickly kicked off my soaked flats, feeling my damp skirt clinging to my legs as I tried not to leave a trail behind me. As we headed for the stairs, Aunt Meredith called after us, her voice still light and warm. "And don't take too long, dinner won't stay hot forever." "Yes, ma'am," I called back with a grin. My mom and I both laughed again as we made our way up the stairs, still dripping slightly but not caring. Somehow, even through all the confusion and emotions of the past few days, we were finding these little moments of lightness together. And for now, that was enough. Upstairs, my mom handed me one of the big fluffy towels from the bathroom, and we both worked on drying off as best we could. I patted my hair and gently blotted my face, careful not to disturb my wig too much. The denim skirt and pink tank top were still damp but not completely soaked, and the fabric was light enough that I didn't really mind. "You sure you don't want to change?" my mom asked softly. I glanced down at myself, at the soft ruffles, the swish of the skirt that still clung lightly to my legs, and shook my head with a small smile. "I'm okay." She smiled back, a little amused but no longer uncomfortable. "Alright." We finished drying off and headed back downstairs, where Aunt Meredith had already set the table. The smell of warm food filled the house, making my stomach growl. The three of us sat down together, my mom, my aunt, and me, as if everything was completely normal. We passed plates and bowls around the table, sharing quiet conversation between bites. My mom even complimented my aunt's mashed potatoes, while I mostly sat there quietly, soaking in the warmth of the moment. For the first time in days, I wasn't scared. I wasn't panicking. I was just happy. Happy to be here. Happy to still be Zoe. Happy that maybe, even if no one fully understood yet, I wasn't as alone as I thought. And for tonight, that was enough. Chapter 15 Rehearsal Day. The soft morning light peeked in through the small window as I slowly opened my eyes. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of birds outside, and the faint creak of the old house settling. I stretched under the covers, feeling the soft, smooth fabric of my pajamas slide against my skin. The pink long sleeve top fit snugly, hugging my arms and torso like a gentle, warm hug. The matching fitted pants clung softly to my legs, warm and cozy. The girly design didn't even faze me anymore, it just felt normal. Comfortable. I lay there for a few more seconds, staring at the ceiling, quietly reminding myself of what today was. Rehearsal day. My stomach flipped a little, but not in panic like before. It was more like the nervous excitement you get before something important. Finally, I pushed back the covers and slipped out of bed, my bare feet cool against the floor. I ran my hands through my wig, which I had carefully kept on overnight, and made my way downstairs. The house was quiet but smelled like fresh coffee. When I rounded the corner into the kitchen, Aunt Meredith looked up from her seat at the table and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Zoe." "Morning," I said softly, my voice still thick from sleep. Waiting for me at the table was a bowl of cereal already poured, a spoon resting inside. The familiar bright pink of the sugary loops made me smile as I slid into my seat. My aunt sat across from me, sipping her coffee while flipping through a stack of papers related to the wedding schedule. "You've got a busy day ahead," she said with a grin. "Final run through before the real thing." I nodded, my heart skipping again. "I know!" But as I scooped up a spoonful of cereal and took my first bite, I couldn't help but feel ready. Scared, sure. But ready. I crunched on another spoonful of cereal, the sugary taste helping to calm my nerves a little as I glanced up at Aunt Meredith. What time is everything happening today?" I asked. She looked up from her papers and smiled. "Your rehearsal is at noon. We'll be heading over to the barn in a little while to get you ready." I nodded, feeling my stomach flip a little again. Noon. That's not far off. "And what about Shelby's wedding?" I added softly. "The one she's in." Aunt Meredith gave a little sigh as she sipped her coffee again. That one's later this evening. Around 6. They're doing the ceremony at sunset. I stirred my cereal absent-mindedly. Am I allowed to go watch that one? She gave me a sympathetic smile and gently shook her head. No, sweetheart. That wedding's a bit more private, just the couple's family and bridal party. They want it very small and quiet. I tried not to let my disappointment show. I would have loved to watch Shelby do her part, to see how she carried herself, how she smiled walking down the aisle. She made it all look so easy, so natural. Aunt Meredith must have read my expression, because she reached across the table and gently patted my hand. But don't worry! Tomorrow's your turn! And you'll be every bit as wonderful as Shelby is! I gave a small smile, my nerves mixing with a strange kind of excitement again. Tomorrow! My turn was almost here. Aunt Meredith glanced at the clock, then looked back at me with a warm smile. Alright, kiddo, you've got a little bit of time before Shelby gets here. Why don't you head upstairs and get dressed? Just something normal for now. You don't need to be all dolled up until rehearsal. I nodded, quietly relieved. Okay. I finished my cereal, rinsed the bowl in the sink, and patted my way upstairs, my soft pink pajamas swishing lightly with every step. When I got to my room, I closed the door behind me and exhaled, standing in front of my dresser for a moment. The usual choices stared back at me. Shelby's bag sat neatly on the floor, still full of dresses, skirts, cute tops, all waiting for me to slip back into Zoe when the time came. But for now? I reached into the dresser drawer and pulled out my regular clothes. Boy clothes. Simple jeans. A plain dark t-shirt. Socks and my old sneakers. It almost felt strange slipping back into them, the fabric rougher, stiffer, less light. My jeans clung to my legs in a way that felt heavier after all the flowy skirts and soft fabrics I'd gotten used to. My t-shirt hung loosely, boxier than anything Shelby had ever picked out for me. I stared at myself briefly in the mirror. There was Dylan. Not Zoe. At least for now. I ran a hand through my short hair, still flattened slightly from sleeping with the wig cap, and sat down on the edge of the bed, thinking. Today's just rehearsal, I reminded myself. Tomorrow will be the real thing, dresses, tights, bows, makeup. Everything. All day. For a moment, my stomach flipped again, a mixture of nerves and something that was starting to feel dangerously close to excitement. But for now, I'd take this little break while I could. After getting dressed, I made my way downstairs. My aunt was still in the kitchen, humming softly as she wiped the counters, so I slipped quietly through the hallway and wandered toward the shop. The store was empty right now, the morning light streaming in through the big front windows, casting a soft glow over the rows of dresses hanging neatly along the racks. I walked slowly through the space, my footsteps quiet on the polished wood floor. A few days ago, when I first arrived, I hadn't really paid much attention to all the flower girl dresses. They were just dresses. Pretty, sure, but they felt like something from a world I didn't belong to. But today was different. Now, as I walked past the rows of satin, lace, tulle, and soft ribbons, I couldn't help but let my eyes linger. There were dozens of dresses, each one slightly different, soft pinks, creamy whites, pale yellows, delicate blues. Some with simple skirts, others layered in full, with sparkles or intricate embroidery on the bodices. Ribbons tied neatly into bows. Tiny sleeves that puffed gently at the shoulders. Matching sashes hanging on the hangers beside them. I stopped in front of one particularly beautiful dress, pale lavender with tiny pearl-like beads sewn along the neckline, and a skirt that looked like it would float if you twirled just right. I stared at it for a long moment. A few days ago, I would have never imagined myself wearing something like this. But now I found myself wondering what it would feel like, the soft fabric swirling around my legs, the gentle weight of the skirt swishing as I walked, the way the sash would be tied snug at my back. I imagined standing in front of the mirror, seeing myself in it. Beautiful! Pretty! A real flower girl! The thought made my heart flutter again. My stomach flipped in that familiar mixture of nerves and something else I was still learning to name. I reached out, gently brushing my fingers along the edge of the dress, feeling the smooth satin beneath my fingertips. Maybe after tomorrow, I thought. Maybe I'll want to try these too. For now, I just smiled softly to myself and kept walking through the rows, lost in the gentle swirl of my own thoughts. As I kept wandering between the rows of dresses, my fingers gently trailing across the fabrics, my thoughts drifted again, farther than I expected. Would Mom ever let me come back here again? The idea surprised me a little, even though it came from somewhere inside I hadn't fully admitted yet. Not just to visit. Not just to see Aunt Meredith or Shelby. But to do this again. To put on another dress. To be Zoe again. Maybe even to be a rented flower girl for another wedding. The thought filled my chest with a strange warmth. This place, this store, this farm, this whole little world, had become something I never expected, safe. It wasn't like the city, where people might stare, or whisper, or judge. Here, I could just be. And maybe part of me didn't want that to end after tomorrow. I stared at another dress, this one was soft pink, with layers of tulle like floating clouds and a satin sash tied into a perfect bow in the back. I imagined myself in it, standing at the end of the aisle, petals in hand, walking carefully, smiling, feeling pretty. Could I ask Mom? The thought made my stomach flutter again. I wasn't sure if she'd say yes. She was still figuring this out, just like I was. But maybe one day. Maybe if she saw how happy it made me. I bit my lip, smiling softly at the dress as the morning light sparkled off the tiny beads stitched across its bodice. The more I let myself imagine it, the more I realized how much I wanted to. I was still lost in my thoughts, staring at a soft light purple dress with delicate lace along the collar and tiny pearl beads stitched across the bodice. The skirt flowed gently down into layers of tulle that caught the morning light just right. I reached out again, gently running my fingertips across the fabric, lost in my own world, when… Boo! I jumped slightly, my heart skipping as I quickly pulled my hand back. I turned to find Shelby standing behind me with a wide grin, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Sorry," she said with a soft laugh. "Couldn't resist." I let out a breathy laugh as my nerves settled. "You scared me." She grinned and stood beside me, her eyes drifting over the same dress I had been admiring. "It's pretty, isn't it?" "Yeah," I whispered. We stood there quietly for a moment, looking at the rows of flower girl dresses lined up like a soft, pastel rainbow. Then Shelby let out a small sigh, her voice thoughtful. "You know, I never really stopped to think about what it's like for a boy." I glanced at her, a little surprised by the seriousness in her tone. She kept her eyes on the dresses as she spoke. "I mean, I've always been a girl. I've always had dresses. I never had to wonder what it would feel like to wear one. It's just normal for me. I love being a girl. I love wearing these kinds of clothes." She turned her head slightly toward me, her voice softer now. "But for boys, I guess it's different, huh? You see dresses and you probably wonder what it's like. How it feels. How you'd look in one." I swallowed, my throat tight as I nodded slowly. "Yeah. I never really thought about them before. But now, I can't stop thinking about them." Shelby smiled softly. "It's kind of brave, you know. To even try." I felt my cheeks warm. "I don't feel brave." She nudged me gently with her shoulder. "You are." We stood there a little longer, side by side, both quietly looking at the dresses, each of us thinking from two very different places, but somehow meeting in the middle. And for the first time, I didn't feel so weird for wanting to wear them. Without saying anything, Shelby gently tugged on my hand. "Come on! I want to show you something." I followed her toward the back of the shop, past the main racks of flower girl dresses, toward a door I hadn't really noticed before. She pulled out a small key from her pocket, unlocked it, and pushed it open. Inside was a small storage room, lit by a single hanging bulb. It smelled faintly like lavender sachets and polished wood. All along the walls were rows of carefully packed plastic garment bags, hanging neatly like a private little archive. Dozens of dresses and tiny suits filled the racks, pinks, yellows, purples, whites, blues, some simple, others glittery and elaborate. These, Shelby said, her voice almost reverent, are some of the old outfits. Stuff from weddings we've helped with over the years. Some of them were rented, some were donated back, and a few are just too special to part with. She stepped forward, carefully flipping through the hangers. I watched as countless dresses slid past, each one unique, each one with a story, worn by some little girl standing proudly in front of a crowd. Finally, Shelby stopped and pulled out a small dress. It was tiny, barely big enough for a toddler, made of pale pink satin with short puffy sleeves, a wide sash with a perfect bow, and little embroidered flowers along the skirt. She held it up with both hands, smiling as she looked at it. "This was mine," she said softly. "My very first flower girl dress. I was 3. I blinked, staring at how small it was. "You wore that?" She giggled. "Yep. I could barely walk in it, but I was determined. My mom says I was obsessed with the bow on the back." She gently smoothed the fabric as she spoke, her fingers tracing the tiny floral embroidery. "I think that's when I fell in love with dresses. With being a girl. With the whole magic of it all." I watched her for a moment, how proud and happy she looked, remembering it, and I felt something soft stir in my chest again. Shelby glanced over at me, her voice warm. "It's funny, isn't it? How one little dress can change how you feel about yourself." I swallowed, nodding softly. "Yeah. I guess I know that now." She smiled, slipping the tiny dress carefully back onto its hanger. "And you're getting your own version of that tomorrow." I smiled nervously but couldn't help feeling a small flutter of excitement building again. Tomorrow. My own dress. My own moment. And maybe, my own version of magic. Shelby turned back to me with a bright grin. "You know, we could always pick something from here for your rehearsal today." My stomach flipped a little. "From here? Like, right now?" She nodded, already flipping through the rows of hanging garments with practiced ease. "Why not? You've got to practice in something close to what you wear tomorrow, right? Might as well make it fun." I followed nervously as she slid dress after dress along the rack, layers of soft fabric brushing against each other with faint whispers. Then she paused. Her hand rested on a dress tucked slightly toward the back. "This one," she said softly, pulling it out. It was beautiful, a sleeveless dress with alternating panels of soft pink and crisp white. The bodice was simple but elegant, with a tiny satin bow sewn right at the waistline. The skirt flared out gently, full and light, with a few subtle layers of tulle underneath to give it that perfect swish when walking. "This will look so pretty on you," Shelby said with a small, excited bounce. I swallowed, my heart fluttering. "You really think so?" She smiled warmly. "Absolutely." I stared at the dress for another moment, my fingers brushing over the smooth fabric. The pink was soft and pale, not too bright, just enough to feel girly without screaming it. The white panels made it feel light and almost graceful. I'll try it," I said softly. Shelby beamed. "That's my girl." She handed it to me carefully and motioned toward the nearby changing area. "Go on! I'll help you zip up once you're in it." Taking a deep breath, I slipped into the small dressing room and carefully undressed, folding my boy clothes and setting them aside. The soft lining of the dress slid over my skin as I pulled it over my head, the fabric whispering softly as it settled into place. The skirt brushed gently against my legs, light and airy. "Ready?" Shelby called softly from the other side of the curtain. "Yeah." She stepped inside, gently zipped up the back of the dress, and tied the sash into a perfect bow at my waist. Stepping out, I caught sight of myself in the tall mirror. The pink and white dress framed my body perfectly. The way it swished softly as I moved, the bow tied snug at my waist, the sleeveless top showing my bare shoulders, I looked like I belonged in it. Like I belonged here. Shelby stood beside me, grinning ear to ear. "See? Told you!" I smiled, nerves still fluttering but mixed now with something warm. Excitement! Tomorrow is coming! And somehow, I was ready for it! I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection. But it didn't feel like I was looking at me, at least, not the version of me I had always known. It was Zoe! The soft pink and white dress fit perfectly. The skirt flared gently with every tiny movement I made, swishing lightly around my legs. The bow at my waist sat perfectly tied, snug but comfortable. The sleeveless top framed my shoulders in a way that made me feel delicate, light. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't feel like I was wearing a costume. I felt like I was her. I lifted the skirt slightly with both hands and gave it a small twirl. The fabric spun around me like a soft breeze, the layers swishing in smooth circles. My heart leapt as I spun again, the hem floating out wider, the dress catching the air with each turn. I smiled. This is awesome! It was like something I'd always been curious about but never allowed myself to feel fully until now. I twirled again, laughing softly to myself, feeling light and free in a way I hadn't known was possible. I only stopped when I caught movement in the corner of the mirror. I froze mid-spin. Standing near the doorway was Ethan. His eyes were wide, and for a second, he looked almost frozen too, like he wasn't sure if he should be there or not. I felt my heart spike instantly, my cheeks burning as I realized how much he had just seen. Ethan blinked, his voice soft, barely above a whisper. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." My mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. I stood there in the middle of the dressing room, my dress still slowly settling from my last twirl, staring at him as my heart pounded. For a few long, breathless seconds, neither of us moved. Then Ethan gave a small, almost shy smile. "You look really happy." His voice was gentle, warm, like he didn't want to scare me out of the moment I had been lost in. I swallowed, still feeling my cheeks burning, but I couldn't stop myself from smiling back. I guess I am." Ethan stepped a little closer, keeping his voice quiet. "I mean it! You look really good, Zoe!" The way he said my name, so casually, so naturally, made my heart flutter again. There wasn't a trace of awkwardness or judgment in his voice. Just kindness. I hesitated, biting my lip as a strange little question bubbled up inside me. "Do you ever?" I paused, not sure if I should even say it, but then let the words slip out. "Do you ever wonder what it would feel like? You know, wearing a dress?" Ethan blinked in surprise, and for a moment, his face flushed a little. He let out a nervous chuckle. "I mean, I guess I've thought about it before. Not like seriously, but sometimes I wonder what all the fuss is about." Before I could say anything else, Shelby suddenly gasped behind us like she had just won the lottery. "Oh my gosh!" She practically squealed, bouncing excitedly. "You have to try one on!" Ethan's eyes widened. "Wait, what? No, I didn't mean..." "Come on, Ethan!" Shelby said, already practically spinning toward the racks of dresses. "You're curious! And we have so many options! You don't have to wear anything super girly. Well, unless you want to." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, glancing between the two of us, his face somewhere between embarrassment and amusement. "I don't know." Shelby grinned mischievously. "Zoe did it! And look at how amazing she turned out! This is a no judgment zone, remember?" I smiled softly at Ethan, my nerves forgotten now, replaced by something lighter. "You don't have to if you don't want to. But it is kind of fun." Ethan hesitated, but then let out a breath and laughed. "Okay. One. But you're both picking it." Shelby clapped her hands. "Deal!" She immediately darted back toward the racks like a girl on a mission, her ponytail swishing behind her. I couldn't help but giggle, my heart full in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. For a moment, we weren't thinking about tomorrow's wedding, or secrets, or being scared. We were just three kids, standing in a room full of dresses, figuring out how to simply be. Shelby spun back toward us, grinning like she was about to throw a surprise party. "Alright, Zoe. You get to pick." I blinked, surprised. "Me?" "Yep," she said cheerfully. "You know the feeling? You get to pick his very first dress." Ethan laughed nervously, shifting his weight. "Yeah, Zoe. Be gentle." I smiled, feeling both nervous and excited. My eyes scanned the rows of dresses carefully. There were so many colors, so many styles, but one dress immediately caught my eye. It was soft, delicate, and sweet, perfect for someone's first time. I gently pulled it off the rack. A pastel pink dress with capped puff sleeves made of tulle. The sleeves looked like little clouds sitting softly on the shoulders. The bodice was smooth and simple, with a tiny satin bow right at the waist. The skirt flared out gently with layers of tulle beneath, light and airy, but not too overwhelming. "This one," I said softly, holding it up. Shelby's face lit up. "Ooh, perfect choice!" Ethan's eyes widened slightly as he took in the dress. "That's very pink!" Shelby giggled. "Exactly the point!" I held it out to him, trying to suppress my own grin. "You said one dress! This is the one!" Ethan chuckled, taking the hanger with both hands. "Alright! Fair is fair!" Shelby pointed toward the changing area. "You know where to go." As Ethan disappeared behind the curtain, Shelby turned to me, whispering excitedly, "I'm so proud of you!" I blushed. "For picking a dress?" She shook her head with a warm smile. "No! For all of this!" We both giggled softly, waiting for Ethan to come back out. The curtain rustled, and after a few seconds of shuffling, Ethan poked his head out nervously. A little help?" Shelby smiled and waved him out. "Come on, let's see!" Slowly, Ethan stepped out, holding the skirt gently in his hands as he moved carefully, like he was afraid he might break the dress just by wearing it. The pastel pink fabric floated softly around him, the capped tulle puff sleeve sitting delicately on his shoulders. The skirt swayed lightly with every step, the layers of tulle giving it that magical floaty feel I had quickly grown to love. He looked embarrassed, but not miserable. In fact, there was even a tiny bit of laughter behind his nervous smile. "Okay," he said, glancing down at himself, "this feels really weird." "It's supposed to at first," Shelby said, walking up to him. "But you're doing great." I stepped forward to help, reaching for the zipper in the back. "Here, let me." With careful fingers, I pulled the zipper up smoothly, making sure the fabric stayed flat. The dress fit him surprisingly well, snug, but not tight. Once it was zipped, Shelby handed me the sash. "Now," she said, turning to me like a teacher giving a very important lesson, "I'm going to show you how to tie the perfect bow." She stood behind Ethan and demonstrated, guiding my hands as I followed along. "First, make sure the lengths are even. Loop the side under. Pull tight but not too tight. Now fold the first loop, and..." Her hands worked gracefully, and I mimicked her movements as best I could. Finally, we stepped back. A perfect, full satin bow sat at Ethan's lower back, resting neatly against the soft layers of pink tulle. "There you go," Shelby said proudly. "Perfect!" Ethan turned slightly, feeling the way the skirt moved around him. "Wow! It actually feels kinda..." He hesitated, his cheeks flushing, light. I couldn't help but smile. "Told you!" Shelby nodded with a grin. "See? There's a reason we like dresses!" We all laughed softly, the room filled with warmth and lightness. In that moment, we weren't worried about anything, not the wedding, not the nerves, not even the secrets. Just three friends sharing something special. As the laughter settled, Shelby clapped her hands together, her eyes sparkling. "Alright, since we're all dressed up. Well, mostly dressed up," she glanced down at herself and smirked, "why don't we do a little practice flower girl walk?" I couldn't help but laugh as I looked at her outfit. "It's kind of funny, isn't it? You're the only real girl here, and you're not even wearing a dress." She looked down at her faded jeans and gray t-shirt with Meadowbrook wedding venue printed across the chest, and rolled her eyes dramatically. Yeah. Somebody has to be the responsible one today." Ethan laughed too. "At least you two didn't throw me in one of those giant poofy ones." Shelby grinned mischievously. "Don't tempt me." She grabbed a small basket from one of the nearby shelves, the kind the flower girls carried. It was already half filled with silk petals for practice. "Here, Zoe! You lead!" My stomach fluttered again as she handed me the basket, but I nodded, taking it carefully in my hands. The light pink and white dress swished softly around me as I stepped to the start of the imaginary aisle between two racks of dresses. Ethan stood a few steps behind me, his pastel pink skirt fluttering slightly as he shifted his weight nervously. Shelby stood off to the side, hands on her hips, grinning like a proud instructor. "Okay, Zoe! Remember what we practiced, smooth steps, smile, and gently toss the petals as you go." I took a deep breath, held my head high, and took my first step forward. The dress floated around me with every movement, the tulle layers gently brushing against my legs. I dipped my hand into the basket and scattered a handful of petals onto the floor, watching them flutter softly to the ground. Step by step, I walked with steady, even strides, feeling the dress sway perfectly around me. My heart was racing, but not out of fear. Out of pure, surprising joy. Ethan followed behind, doing his best to mimic me, his own dress swishing along. He moved carefully, trying to stay balanced while occasionally glancing at the way his skirt floated with every step. "Not bad, Ethan!" Shelby called, laughing. "You've got a natural twirl to your walk." He laughed nervously but smiled. "I don't think I've ever paid this much attention to how I walk before." When we reached the end of our little makeshift aisle, Shelby clapped her hands. "Perfect! You both looked amazing!" I beamed, my cheeks flushed but warm, as I held the empty basket against my waist. And for a moment, I didn't feel like I was practicing. I felt like I belonged there. We were still giggling at the end of our pretend aisle when we heard the sound of the back door creak open. Aunt Meredith stepped into the room, pausing for a moment as she took in the sight before her, me standing in my pink and white practice dress, Ethan beside me in the pastel pink puff-sleeved one, and Shelby grinning proudly off to the side like a stage director. For a second, Aunt Meredith blinked, then her lips curled into a wide, warm smile. Well, she said, crossing her arms with amusement. "Don't you two look absolutely adorable?" Ethan flushed instantly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Oh! Thanks, Miss Meredith!" Aunt Meredith chuckled softly. "You make a very beautiful flower girl, Ethan." That only made his face turn redder, but he managed a little embarrassed laugh. This was Shelby's idea. Shelby gave a proud little curtsy. "And a great idea, thank you very much." Then Aunt Meredith's eyes shifted to me, her voice softening with that warm, motherly pride she always seemed to carry when she looked at me lately. "I'm glad Shelby got you into something for today's rehearsal," she said. "That dress suits you perfectly." I smiled, feeling my cheeks warm too, but in a different way, a happy way. Aunt Meredith continued, her tone turning just a little more businesslike. "The actual dress you'll be wearing tomorrow, the real one, is being steamed and prepped right now. It'll be ready first thing in the morning for the big day." My heart fluttered again at the reminder. Tomorrow! The real thing! She smiled kindly at me. "But for now, you'll be perfect for rehearsal in this one." I nodded softly. "Okay." Aunt Meredith clapped her hands gently. "Alright, you three, rehearsal's starting soon. Shelby, you better go get into your regular dress, and Ethan, you can escape the pink now." Ethan sighed with playful relief, already heading toward the changing room. "Thank you." Shelby shot me a wink. "You stay in yours, Zoe. You've got a rehearsal to shine at." And as I looked at myself again in the mirror, standing there in the soft pink and white dress, I finally felt ready. Tomorrow would be huge! But today was mine too! The warm afternoon sun followed us as Aunt Meredith led me across the gravel toward the barn. My heart was pounding again, but not from fear like before. This was different. This was real. As soon as we stepped inside, I froze for a moment. The barn was buzzing with people. The whole wedding party was there, bridesmaids, groomsmen, family members, a few staff from the venue. Dozens of faces I didn't recognize. And all of them were wearing regular clothes, jeans, t-shirts, casual blouses, sneakers. And then there was me. Standing there in my pink and white sleeveless dress, with my skirt floating gently around my legs, my sash tied perfectly into a bow, my wig neatly styled. The silk petals from our earlier practice still clung to the hem as I held my little basket by my waist. I felt overdressed. Exposed. Like every pair of eyes might turn at any second and realize I didn't belong. Aunt Meredith sensed my nerves instantly and gently squeezed my shoulder as we moved through the barn. "You're doing great, Zoe. Just breathe." We passed a few curious glances as we made our way toward one of the smaller side rooms tucked off the main aisle. My heart raced faster as we approached the door. Inside, I could hear quiet voices, the couple. The groom's voice was low and uncertain. "I still don't know if this is a good idea. I mean, a boy in a flower girl dress? What if it's too obvious? The guests will know." The bride's voice responded, softer but anxious. "Well, what else can we do? The dress only fits a certain size, and..." The groom cut her off with a nervous chuckle. "He'll be cute, sure, but he'll obviously still look like a boy in a dress." I froze just outside the door, my stomach twisting into tight knots. But Aunt Meredith didn't hesitate. She knocked once, then pushed the door open with a warm, confident smile. "We're ready to proceed with the rehearsal." The couple turned, their conversation cutting off abruptly. The groom's eyes widened the moment he saw me, standing quietly behind Aunt Meredith, my hands holding the little basket carefully against my waist. The bride gasped softly, her whole face lighting up. "Oh my gosh! She's perfect!" The groom blinked several times, his jaw tightening slightly. "Wait! This isn't another girl you found?" Aunt Meredith smiled kindly. "No! This is still Dylan." The bride's hand flew up to her chest as she stared at me, her voice breathless. "He looks absolutely beautiful! You'd never know? Oh, sweetheart, you look darling!" My cheeks burned hot, but something fluttered in my chest that wasn't just embarrassment. Her words, "beautiful, darling," wrapped around me like a warm breeze. The groom, for his part, let out a breath and finally gave a small, sheepish chuckle. "Well, I have to admit, I was wrong." He looked me up and down one more time, shaking his head in disbelief. "You really do look like a proper flower girl." The bride smiled even brighter, stepping closer. "Thank you again, Dylan. This means so much to us." I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered, "You're welcome." Aunt Meredith smiled and gently placed a hand on my back. "Shall we get started, then?" The couple both nodded, and with that, we stepped out into the main sanctuary, where my first real rehearsal as Zoe was about to begin. The barn had been transformed into a full wedding setup, even for rehearsal. Rows of white chairs lined both sides of the wide aisle, flowers already placed at the altar, soft music playing faintly in the background. Aunt Meredith led me to a seat near the back, whispering softly, "Just sit here for now until they call you up." I sat carefully, smoothing my skirt under me as the layers of tulle settled around my legs. The polished wooden floor gleamed beneath my flats, and I felt the smooth fabric of my dress hug me gently, a constant reminder of where I was, and who I was, right now. The priest, an older man with a kind face, stood at the front, addressing the entire wedding party as they gathered. "Alright, everyone, let's go over the order of the ceremony one more time," he said in a calm voice. "We'll get everyone in place and walk through the timing." I watched as the best man and the groomsmen grouped together near the front, all joking and chatting quietly among themselves. They seemed so at ease, so casual in their jeans and button-up shirts. On the opposite side, the maid of honor gathered the bridesmaids together, each one holding small bouquets, whispering excitedly to each other as they fixed each other's hair or smoothed down their clothes. I sat quietly, clutching my little basket in my lap, feeling very small in comparison to the older teens and adults around me. The soft pink and white dress seemed to glow against the sea of everyday clothes, making me feel both exposed and somehow special all at once. For a few moments, I almost forgot I was part of this. I was just watching. An outsider. Then I heard the priest's voice again. "And now, let's have our ring bearer and flower girl come up, please." I blinked, startled. "Oh right! That's me!" My stomach flipped as I stood up quickly, smoothing my skirt again and taking a deep breath. My flats tapped lightly on the wooden floor as I carefully made my way down the aisle toward the front. Next to me, already standing near the aisle, was the ring bearer, a tiny 4-year-old boy with neatly combed blonde hair and big round eyes. He clutched a small pillow tightly in his little hands, looking just as nervous as I felt. As I reached my spot beside him, I glanced down at him and gave a tiny smile. He glanced up at me and whispered, "Your dress is really pretty." My cheeks flushed, but I smiled back. "Thanks." The priest smiled kindly at both of us. "Alright, you two, when we cue you, you'll walk down the aisle together. Nice and slow. Flower girl first, then the ring bearer follows right behind." I clutched my basket a little tighter, feeling the silky ribbon press against my fingers. This was it. The first real step. Tomorrow would be the real thing. But today, I was here. I was Zoe. And I was ready to walk. The priest gave a small nod to the coordinator standing by the barn doors. "Alright, let's begin." The soft instrumental music started playing in the background as the rehearsal run officially began. I stood at the head of the aisle, the little ring bearer just behind me. My fingers gripped the basket tightly as my heart thudded against my chest. The aisle stretched out long in front of me, rows of people watching, even if this wasn't the full crowd yet. I could feel every eye. I could feel the weight of the dress, the bow tied snug at my back, the way the skirt floated gently against my legs. The ribbon handles of the basket tugged slightly against my sweaty palms. My breath started to quicken. What if I mess up? What if I drop the petals too fast? What if they all stare at me and see I'm not really? My throat tightened as the panic built, creeping up faster than I could stop it. And then, as if drawn by instinct, I glanced up. To the rafters. There, sitting quietly on one of the sturdy crossbeams, were Shelby and Ethan. They'd snuck up to their usual hiding spot, just like before. Shelby noticed me looking up and gave a small encouraging thumbs up, her smile wide and bright. Ethan, now back in his boy clothes, simply smiled warmly and nodded, his expression calm and proud. Their presence hit me like a wave of reassurance. I wasn't alone. I never really was. The tightness in my chest loosened just a little, my breathing evening out as I focused on them, not the people watching, not the long aisle, not my nerves. Just Shelby. Just Ethan. "You got this," I heard Shelby's voice say in my head. I took my first step forward. The skirt swished gently with every careful stride, the soft weight of the dress moving naturally around my legs like it belonged there. My basket hand moved in rhythm, gently scattering petals onto the aisle in neat little arcs. Step. Petals. Smile. Step. Petals. Smile. The ring bearer toddled along behind me, doing his best to follow along, his little pillow clutched tightly to his chest. As I walked further, my confidence grew with each step. The nerves didn't go away completely, but they softened, drowned out by something warmer, stronger. By the time I reached the end of the aisle, my heart was still racing, but now it was from excitement, not panic. The priest smiled. "Perfect, Zoe! Just like that tomorrow!" I felt my face flush, but I smiled and gave a tiny nod. From the corner of my eye, I saw Shelby give a quiet fist pump from the rafters. Ethan gave me another nod, mouthing the words, "You nailed it!" And for the first time since this whole journey began, I let myself believe it. The rest of the rehearsal moved quickly after my walk. The bridesmaids practiced their entrances, the groomsmen stood tall at their places, and the priest calmly walked everyone through the ceremony steps: where to stand, when to move, who would hand over the rings, where the photographer would be. I stayed off to the side now, my basket resting in my hands, the petals nearly gone. The little ring bearer sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, playing quietly with one of the silk petals, completely unaware of how important tomorrow was. I glanced up at the rafters again, and while Shelby and Ethan had slipped away at some point, I could still feel the comfort of knowing they had been there when I needed them most. After about half an hour, the priest finally clapped his hands together and smiled. "Alright, everyone! That's it for today! You've all done wonderfully! Tomorrow's the real thing, get some rest and be here on time!" A quiet murmur of laughter and relieved sighs filled the barn as people started gathering their things, chatting casually as they made their way toward the doors. Aunt Meredith appeared at my side and gently squeezed my shoulder. "You did beautifully, sweetheart! Just like I knew you would!" "Thanks," I said softly, still feeling that strange, warm buzz of excitement humming beneath my nerves. The bride walked over too, her face glowing. "You're going to be perfect tomorrow, Zoe! Absolutely perfect!" Even the groom, who had seemed unsure before, nodded with a small smile. "You really pulled it off, kid! We appreciate you doing this!" I smiled and whispered, "I'm happy to help." As the crowd thinned and the barn slowly emptied, the weight of what tomorrow held settled gently on my shoulders. Tomorrow, it wouldn't be practice. Tomorrow, it would be real. And I was ready. As the last of the wedding party filed out of the barn, I stepped into the late afternoon air, the sun hanging low in the sky, painting everything in warm gold. And there they were, waiting for me just outside the barn doors. Shelby stood with her hands behind her back, rocking on her heels, her bright smile ready the moment she saw me. Ethan stood next to her, hands in his pockets, wearing that same gentle, supportive grin he always seemed to have when I needed it most. "There she is!" Shelby called out, skipping forward as I walked toward them. "Our star flower girl!" I blushed, still clutching the empty petal basket as my dress swished softly with every step. "I didn't mess up!" "You didn't just not mess up," Shelby said, practically bouncing. "You were perfect!" Ethan nodded. "Seriously! You looked like you've been doing it your whole life!" I smiled, feeling my cheeks flush again. "Thanks! Both of you?" Shelby reached out and pulled me into a quick, warm hug, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "Tomorrow's going to be amazing! Tomorrow's the real thing," I whispered, half nervous, half excited. "And you're ready," Ethan added. "You've got this!" For a moment, the three of us stood there under the soft glow of the sunset, the breeze rustling through the trees behind the barn, the world calm around us. For the first time in this whole crazy experience, I wasn't scared of tomorrow. I was ready to be Zoe. Chapter 16. The morning sun was already pouring through the windows when the house and venue started to come alive with motion. People were everywhere, staff members, family, photographers, florists, all moving in and out of the barn, preparing for the day ahead. Shelby stood next to me, bouncing slightly on her heels, full of energy as always. The excitement in the air was thick, almost buzzing. Suddenly, one of the bridal assistants appeared, motioning toward Shelby. "Alright, sweetie, it's time to get you into your flower girl dress." Shelby grinned and turned to me. "Showtime!" She gave my hand a quick squeeze before following the assistant toward the bridal suite, disappearing into the crowd. She was about to become the flower girl for the wedding happening later that evening, the first wedding of this busy weekend. I watched her go, smiling, but then I felt the gentle tap on my shoulder. Aunt Meredith stood behind me, smiling kindly. "Alright, Zoe, let's get you out of your rehearsal dress for now," she said. "We don't want it getting wrinkled before your ceremony tomorrow." I nodded, feeling a small flutter of nerves again. We walked back toward the shop together, where Aunt Meredith carefully helped me step out of the pink and white practice dress. She hung it gently on its hanger, smoothing it out with practiced hands. "There we go! Safe and ready for tomorrow!" Standing there in my underthings, I paused for a moment, debating what to wear now that I was out of the dress. I knew I didn't want to change into full boy clothes, not today, not after everything I'd been through. Instead, I reached into Shelby's bag, pulling out something simple but still very much Zoe. A soft, light gray skirt, flowy in knee length, and a pale pink spaghetti strap tank top with a tiny embroidered bow at the neckline. It was casual, comfortable, and just the right amount of girly for today. I slipped them on carefully, smoothing the skirt down over my hips and adjusting the thin straps of the tank top on my shoulders. The fabric was light and cool against my skin, perfect for the warm, busy day ahead. I glanced at myself in the mirror. Not the flower girl dress. Not full boy clothes. Just Zoe. Casual. Relaxed. Me. Aunt Meredith smiled as she looked me over. Perfect choice, sweetheart. I smiled softly, my nerves slowly melting into a quiet kind of excitement. Tomorrow was my big day. But for today, I could just enjoy being me. The bridal suite was buzzing with activity as I followed Shelby inside. Everything smelled faintly like hairspray, perfume, and flowers. The room was filled with soft light, big mirrors, and racks of dresses waiting for the bridesmaids and Shelby herself. Shelby plopped happily into one of the chairs by the little nail station, grinning as one of the attendants gently took her hand to begin painting her nails. She held her fingers out carefully as the brush swept across her tiny nails with smooth, practiced strokes. The color was a perfect match to her flower girl dress, a soft pastel yellow that shimmered just slightly in the light. I stood nearby, quietly watching it all. For some reason, I couldn't stop staring. Not because it was weird, but because I knew, tomorrow, this would be me. Shelby glanced up at me with a knowing grin. "You're staring." I flushed a little. "Sorry." She giggled. "Don't be. You're just getting a sneak peek at what's coming." Once her nails dried, she carefully slipped off her casual clothes and disappeared into one of the nearby dressing stalls to change. I sat on a little bench, waiting as soft chatter filled the room. A few minutes later, the door creaked open and Shelby stepped out. Her flower girl dress was beautiful, pastel yellow with little embroidered daisies along the bodice, short puff sleeves, and a wide satin sash tied neatly around her waist. The skirt flared out softly, layered with just enough tulle to give it that perfect flower girl swish. She carefully pulled on a pair of white tights, smoothing them as she adjusted the soft fabric around her legs, then slipped her feet into a shiny pair of white Mary Janes with tiny bows at the toes. Finally, one of the women called her over to the chair again to finish her hair and makeup. They gently brushed out her ponytail, curling it softly at the ends and clipping it with a small white bow that matched her shoes. A hint of blush was added to her cheeks, a bit of clear gloss on her lips, and a tiny dusting of shimmer to her eyelids. When they were finished, she spun toward me with a wide grin, her eyes twinkling. "So?" she asked, holding her arms out. "What do you think?" "You look amazing," I whispered, honestly a little breathless. Shelby beamed. "Thanks. And tomorrow," she pointed a playful finger at me, "it's your turn." I laughed nervously, my stomach flipping. "Yeah. I know. You'll love it," she teased. "The makeup, the hair, the dress. The whole thing. You're gonna look beautiful, Zoe." I smiled, a mix of nerves and excitement swirling inside me again. Tomorrow. My turn. Shelby's mom appeared in the doorway, her face glowing with pride as she took one look at her daughter all dressed up. "There's my beautiful girl," she said softly. "Come on, sweetheart. It's time." Shelby turned to me one last time before she left. Her smile was still big and full of energy, but there was a little glint of understanding behind it too, like she knew I was feeling a lot right now. She stepped over and gave me a quick, tight hug, careful not to wrinkle her dress. The soft fabric of her satin sash brushed against my arm. "Wish me luck," she whispered. I hugged her back and whispered, "You don't need it." We pulled apart and just smiled at each other for a moment. Then Shelby's mom gently took her hand and led her toward the barn. I followed a few steps behind, but when we reached the doors, I stopped. This was as far as I was allowed to go. The first wedding was private, and I wasn't part of this one. Shelby glanced back one last time from the threshold, giving me a tiny wave and a wink. "See you soon, Zoe," she whispered with a grin. And then she disappeared inside. I stood there quietly, staring at the barn doors for a few moments as soft music started to float through the air from within. Tomorrow, it would be my turn to walk through those doors. Tomorrow, all of this would become real for me. As I stood near the barn doors, quietly listening to the faint music floating out, I heard Aunt Meredith call softly from behind me. "Zoe, why don't you head up to your room and start packing? We'll be leaving Monday morning." I nodded quietly. The reminder stung a little, but I didn't argue. "Yes, ma'am." I turned and walked slowly back toward the house, my flats crunching softly on the gravel. The air was warm, filled with the faint sound of laughter and music coming from the barn behind me. Once inside, I climbed the stairs to my room. The afternoon sun was low in the sky now, casting long golden beams through my window as I opened my suitcase and started packing. I folded my boy clothes neatly, one shirt at a time, stacking them into the suitcase. My jeans, my t-shirts, my sneakers, the clothes that, just days ago, had felt like my whole identity. Now, folding them felt strange. Like they belonged to someone else. I paused for a moment, holding one of my plain t-shirts in my hands, before gently setting it into the suitcase. As I worked, my eyes kept drifting to the window. Down below, I watched as guests arrived for the evening wedding, Shelby's wedding. They filed into the barn in small groups, dressed in nice but simple outfits, summer dresses, light jackets, button-down shirts. Soft conversations floated up through the open window, quiet laughter, cheerful greetings, the occasional call of children running ahead of their parents. I couldn't make out their words, but I could hear their happiness, light, warm, full of excitement for the ceremony about to begin. And part of me couldn't help but imagine myself down there, what it would feel like to be stepping into that barn wearing my own flower girl dress. Walking the aisle. Smiling. Tomorrow, that would be me. But tonight, I just watched. Quietly. Packing away one part of me, while waiting for another to take center stage. As the last of my boy clothes were folded neatly into the suitcase, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the half-packed bag. The closet door was still open, and Shelby's bag of girl clothes sat nearby, untouched for now, but waiting for tomorrow. My flower girl dress for the wedding was hanging carefully in its garment bag by the door, perfectly steamed and ready. The difference between the two piles felt so strange, like two versions of me sitting side by side. The familiar old Dylan. And Zoe. I leaned back slightly, resting my hands behind me on the bed, staring up at the ceiling as the soft murmur of the wedding continued faintly outside. I could hear the distant hum of music, little bursts of applause, and the faint clinking of glasses as the reception was already beginning. Tomorrow night, this would all be over. I'd walk the aisle. I'd wear the dress. I'd be Zoe one last time, at least, for now. And then, I'd go back home. I swallowed, my throat tightening just a little as the weight of it all settled in. Was I nervous? Definitely. Was I scared? A little. But under all of it, was something else. I was ready. I had made it this far. And for once in my life, I wasn't running from the scary parts. Tomorrow, I would be Zoe. And I would own it. A soft knock at the door broke my thoughts. Aunt Meredith peeked in with a gentle smile. "Lights out soon, sweetheart. You've got a big day tomorrow." I nodded. "Okay." She closed the door gently behind her, leaving me alone once more in the quiet. I pulled the covers back, slipped into bed, and stared at the ceiling one last time before closing my eyes. Tomorrow was coming. And I was ready. Chapter 17. A hush fell over the barn as the soft music began to play, delicate piano notes drifting through the warm summer air. The guests all turned toward the back, eyes trained on the aisle. And there I was. Zoe! My flower girl dress flowed gently around me, the satin and lace catching the light. My sash was tied into a perfect bow at my back, and my curls, courtesy of Shelby and 3 different kinds of mousse, framed my face just right. I clutched the petal basket in both hands, took a slow breath, and took my first step down the aisle. Each click of my flats against the wooden floor echoed like a drum in my chest. I felt beautiful. Nervous, but beautiful. My cheeks were warm from the light makeup, and everything, the way the skirt swayed, the faint breeze against my legs, the soft petals brushing my fingers, made me feel real. Halfway down the aisle, I smiled slightly. And then, Shelby stepped out in front of me. But something was wrong. Her face wasn't friendly, it was cold. Distant. She crossed her arms and looked me up and down with a sneer. "You're just a boy in a dress," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You'll never be a real girl." I froze. Everything these past few days? A joke. A waste of time. Look at you! Thinking you belong here. The guests began to murmur, heads turning. Faces blurred in the lights. Whispers. Laughter. And then my dress! It slipped from my shoulders, melting away like paper in the wind. Underneath, I was just me. Just Dylan, in boy clothes again. The softness, the feeling, all of it, gone. Petals spilled from my basket. Everyone laughed. Louder. And louder. Until I gasped. And sat bolt upright in bed. The room was dark. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked around, trying to catch my breath. My blanket was tangled around me. My pink pajama sleeves clung to my arms. The soft hum of the fan was the only sound. It was just a dream. Just a nightmare. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the rise and fall of my breathing. No one had laughed. Shelby hadn't said any of those things. The dress hadn't vanished. I was still me. Still Zoe. For today. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, letting my toes touch the cool floor. Outside, the first rays of morning sun peeked through the curtain. Today was the wedding. Today, I would walk the real aisle. And this time, I wouldn't walk it afraid. The smell of eggs and toast drifted through the house as I padded downstairs, the soft fabric of my pajama pants swishing around my ankles. The kitchen was bright, full of early morning sunlight and the familiar clatter of Aunt Meredith's cooking. Without a word, she slid a plate in front of me, scrambled eggs, toast with strawberry jam, and a glass of orange juice. "Big day," she said with a small smile, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Eat up, flower girl." I sat down and started eating, not realizing how hungry I was until I took the first bite. My hands still shook a little from the dream, but the food helped ground me. It was real. This was real. Footsteps echoed down the stairs, and a moment later, my mom appeared in the doorway, yawning as she pulled her hair into a loose ponytail. She looked at me for a moment, sitting at the kitchen table in pink pajamas, already halfway through breakfast, and gave me a warm smile. "Well," she said, grabbing her own mug of coffee, "you ready for your big day as a flower girl?" I nodded slowly, swallowing a bite of toast. "I think so." Then I paused. "Do you think?" I started, unsure how to say it. "Do you think I could do this again? For other weddings, I mean?" Mom turned, coffee mug halfway to her lips. Her eyes studied my face carefully. "You mean wear the dress again?" she asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I mean, it's kind of annoying sometimes. And tight. And I don't really like tights. But I don't know. It's fun. I like helping. I like looking like I belong." She leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee. "You actually like the annoyingness of dresses?" she asked, her tone half amused, half curious. I shrugged. "Sort of. I mean, I don't love everything about it. But it makes me feel different. Not bad different. Just lighter. Mom smiled, a little wistful. You know, I stopped wearing dresses and skirts not long after I married your dad. I used to love them when I was younger, but somewhere along the way, they started to feel like too much work. Too many rules. Pants were easier. She tilted her head. But maybe the annoying part is also part of the fun. If you choose it. I blinked. You don't think it's weird? She gave me a long look. I think a lot of people wear things they don't like because they think they have to. And I think some people find something they like, even if it's not what the world expects them to wear. That's not weird. That's honest. Aunt Meredith stepped in again, handing my mom a piece of toast and ruffling my hair gently. Well, if you ever want a gig again, she said with a wink, the venue's always in need of a dependable flower girl. I smiled softly. Maybe today wouldn't be the last time after all. Aunt Meredith checked the clock and clapped her hands together lightly. Alright, Zoe, she said, already slipping into the name without hesitation, breakfast is over, time to get a move on. Ceremony starts at noon, and you know it takes at least an hour to get a flower girl wedding ready. I blinked. An hour? She smirked. Hair, makeup, dress, accessories. You think it's just about showing up with a basket? No, sweetie, you're the soft opening act. You set the tone. Now scoot. Go take a bath. I've already laid out what you'll need upstairs. My stomach flipped with nerves, but also a tiny spark of excitement. This was it. I nodded and stood up, brushing crumbs from my pajamas. Okay. As I turned to head upstairs, my mom called after me, don't forget to actually wash behind your ears, flower girl. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help grinning. Upstairs, the guest bathroom already had everything waiting. A folded fluffy white towel. A little travel kit with soft scented soap and shampoo. A hairbrush. And sitting neatly on the sink counter, a small box of accessories, a pearl headband, a pair of clip-on earrings, and a delicate bracelet with a little pink rose charm. It felt real now. All of it. I turned the water on, watching as the steam began to curl up from the bath. As the tub filled, I slowly slipped out of my pajamas and stepped in. The warm water wrapped around me instantly, soaking into my skin and calming my nerves. I closed my eyes for a moment and let my body sink, only my nose above the surface, listening to the water lapping quietly around me. In just a little while, I'd be walking down the aisle. A real flower girl. Zoe. And for today, that was exactly who I wanted to be. I reached for the shampoo bottle Aunt Meredith had left on the edge of the tub and popped open the lid. A sweet scent instantly filled the room, strawberries. It was soft and candy-like, not overpowering, but just enough to make me pause and smile. I poured a little into my palm and lathered it into my hair, letting the suds form a pinkish foam as the scent grew stronger. I closed my eyes and leaned back, rinsing my hair slowly. For some reason, the smell made everything feel more real, more special. I wasn't just getting clean. I was preparing. Like this was a ritual or something. And maybe it was. I reached for the soft sponge and washed the rest of myself, letting the warmth and scent wash away whatever leftover nerves I still had. The water was like a reset button. When I finally pulled the drain, I felt lighter. Wrapped in the soft towel, I looked at myself in the mirror, damp hair clinging to my forehead, cheeks a little pink from the heat. I didn't look like a flower girl yet. But I was close. Back in my room, I found the outfit for the transformation laid out neatly on the bed. The dress was still protected by a sheer plastic covering, hanging on the back of the door, but the underthings, tights, the soft petticoat, and a pair of white flats, were already waiting. Today was the day. When I came downstairs, wrapped in the towel and with damp strawberry-scented hair clinging to my forehead, Aunt Meredith was waiting at the bottom of the stairs with a big smile and a chair pulled up in the middle of the room. "There you are," she said, patting the seat. "Time for the works." I hesitated for just a second before walking over and sitting down. The towel bunched around my legs, and the cool air gave me a little shiver. I could hear soft music playing from the radio in the corner, something classical and floaty, fitting, I guessed, for a wedding morning. Aunt Meredith crouched in front of me and held my shoulders gently. "Okay, Sweet Pea! A lot of things are about to happen that you're not used to. But don't panic! None of it's scary! It's just going to help you look more and more like a girl. That's all!" I nodded slowly, swallowing hard. My heart was already fluttering, but I tried to stay still. That's when Mom came around the corner holding a small bottle of pale pink nail polish and a little smile that was half amused, half proud. "Don't look so terrified," she said gently, kneeling down on my left side. "I promise this stuff comes off. But for today, you're going to look perfect." She took my left hand and held it steady. Aunt Meredith grabbed my right. They worked in tandem, quietly and carefully. I watched as the soft pink polish was brushed across my small fingernails, stroke by stroke, until each one gleamed with a glossy, cotton candy shine. It felt surreal. Not bad. Not even embarrassing, somehow. Just strange and gentle and delicate. Like something sacred was happening in tiny, careful movements. Mom blew softly on my left hand to help it dry. "There," she said, smiling down at me. "You're halfway to fabulous." Aunt Meredith grinned. "Just wait until we do your hair." I couldn't help but laugh, quiet, nervous, but real. This was happening. I was becoming the flower girl. After my nails had dried and I was carefully led over to the full-length mirror near the front room, Mom came back holding something behind her back, something different. "I thought," she said with a twinkle in her eye, "you deserve something a little more special for today." She brought it forward, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a wig, not the short shoulder-length one that I had been practicing with. This one was long. A deep, glossy chestnut brown, with soft curls that shimmered in the light. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, or a princess movie, just seeing it made my heart flutter. I don't know," I said, suddenly shy. "It's not forever," Mom said, kneeling behind me and gently easing the cap onto my head. "But it's for today. And today's a big day." Her hands were gentle, practiced. She adjusted the wig carefully, securing it in place, fluffing the curls over my shoulders. Aunt Meredith stepped in next with a small makeup pouch. "Okay, Sweet Pea," she said with a teasing grin, "close those eyes." I did. She dabbed lightly, a tiny bit of blush to warm my cheeks, some soft eyeshadow in a rose petal pink, and a quick stroke of mascara that tickled more than I expected. Then she reached for a little tube of lip gloss. "Pucker up," she said. I did, and she applied it, smooth and glossy and sticky in a way that made me want to press my lips together again and again. "Don't eat it," she warned, smiling. "It's cherry flavored, not cherry food." I wasn't, I started to say, but I was already tasting it. Sweet. Tart. A little bit too good. Mom stepped back. "Okay. Look." I turned toward the mirror again. The girl staring back at me wasn't Dylan. Not even a little bit. She had long, curled hair that framed her face like she was meant to wear it. Her cheeks were soft and rosy, her lips shone like glass, and her eyes looked wide and sparkling. She looked like Zoe. Beautiful. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because for the first time, I felt it. Not like I was pretending. Not like I was just wearing a costume. I felt like I had become something else. Someone else. Even if it was just for today. My mom handed me the folded tights, soft and bright white, and nodded toward the dressing room. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Time to finish getting ready." Sweetheart! The word hit me gently, like a whisper of encouragement. I nodded, swallowing a little knot in my throat, and carried the tights carefully with both hands as I stepped into the dressing room. The door clicked shut behind me. I looked at myself in the mirror, the long curled wig, the cherry gloss lips, the light pink eyeshadow. Everything about me already looked so different. Like Dylan had stepped out and Zoe had stepped in. and now there was only one last part. I slowly peeled off the boy clothes, the ones I'd worn down earlier just to be comfortable. They felt a little out of place now, like an echo of someone I used to be. I sat down gently on the bench and carefully rolled the tights up one leg at a time, smoothing them out over my calves, knees, thighs. They hugged tightly, warm and soft and strangely comforting. Almost like they were telling me I was exactly where I was supposed to be. When I stood up, the mirror showed a new version of me. Still me, but new. There was a knock on the door. "You ready?" Mom's voice was soft. I opened the door, and she stepped in holding the dress. The pink one. The one with puffed sleeves and delicate lace and the beaded embroidery on the chest. The one that had belonged to the bride's family for generations. The one that had been too tight on Shelby. The one that had been waiting for me. "I remember the first day you put this on," Aunt Meredith said quietly, her eyes shining. "You were nervous then too." She unzipped the back and helped guide it over my head, careful not to smudge the makeup or tug the curls. The fabric settled against the tights like it belonged there. She zipped the back slowly, then knelt to tie the soft pink sash into a neat, perfect bow. "There," she said, stepping back. I turned to the mirror. It fit me perfectly. The dress that started it all. The door opened again just a crack, and Aunt Meredith slipped her hand in with something white and delicate tucked inside her fingers. "Your basket," she said warmly, stepping inside and placing it in my hands. It was light, woven and trimmed with tiny fake roses, filled halfway with pastel petals in every soft shade of spring. Pink, cream, lavender, yellow. I stared down at it as I clutched the handle. This was it. The last piece. Mom straightened the bow at my back one last time and brushed an invisible speck of dust off the skirt. "You look beautiful," she said simply. "Just wait till you see yourself now." I turned toward the mirror again, truly looking this time. The curls cascading down my shoulders. The subtle shimmer of blush. The glossy pink lips. The tights smooth over my legs and disappearing beneath the full skirt of the heirloom pink dress. The flower basket tucked in my hands like it had always belonged there. And in the mirror, the girl stared back at me again. Not like I was pretending, but like I was her. She blinked when I blinked. She smiled faintly when I smiled. I didn't even notice myself leaning forward slightly until... Boo! I gasped and jumped, nearly dropping the flower basket. A giggle broke out beside me, and I turned to see Shelby grinning in the mirror as she leaned in beside me, her reflection suddenly right next to mine. I looked over my shoulder, and sure enough, there she was, standing behind me in her usual jeans and a Venue logo t-shirt, barefoot and holding something in both hands. "Shelby?" I yelped, still catching my breath. "You scared me!" She laughed again, stepping into the room. "Sorry, couldn't help it. You were staring at yourself like you just met a celebrity." I blushed, but didn't look away. She came around behind me and raised the thing in her hands, a crown of white and pink silk flowers woven into a delicate little circlet. "I wear this to every wedding," she said more softly now, lifting it gently onto my head. "It's for good luck. And today, I think you need it more than I do." I felt the petals settle against the curls of my wig like they belonged there, like they had waited for this exact moment. "Thanks," I whispered. She looked at me in the mirror, tilting her head with a thoughtful smile. "You really don't look like Dylan right now." "I know," I said, my voice barely audible. "I really don't." The three of us, me, Shelby, and the girl in the mirror, stood there quietly for just a second longer. Then Shelby stepped back, nodding toward the door. Time to show them what Zoe can do. Chapter 18. The barn loomed ahead of us, glowing in the soft morning light. The wooden doors had been propped open wide, and the scent of fresh flowers and polished floors drifted out to meet us. Shelby walked beside me, humming softly as her bare feet padded across the gravel. She volunteered to take me down, wedding guide duties, she called it, but I had a feeling she also knew I didn't want to walk in alone. Neither of us said much on the way. I held my flower basket tightly in front of me, the ribbons fluttering slightly with each step. My tights made a soft brushing sound under the full hem of my pink dress, and with every step, I could feel the flower crown shift slightly on my wig-covered head. We entered through the side entrance and made our way to the stairs. It was quieter down here. Cooler. The hum of people upstairs preparing the venue became muffled by thick wooden beams and old stone walls. The hallway lights flickered slightly overhead. I looked around as we walked, old wooden doors lined either side. One labeled decorations, another cleaning supplies, another just linens. Farther down, floral storage, reception closet, and one with a sign taped crookedly that read "Do not open, ceremony reserved." And then, at the very end of the hallway, two larger doors facing each other. One said groom in elegant silver letters. The other, bride. Shelby knocked gently on the bride door, then slowly pushed it open. Inside was a flurry of soft pinks and creams, glittering light from vanity mirrors, and the warm scent of hairspray and perfume. The bride, the one I had seen days ago holding the dress I now wore, stood in the middle of the room. And she was stunning. Her white gown shimmered in the overhead lighting, embroidered with pearls and lace in long elegant swoops. Her hair had been curled into soft waves and pinned just right with a silver tiara. The bridesmaids fluttered around her in matching pale pink dresses, pinning, brushing, adjusting. The maid of honor stood near the mirror, applying mascara while holding someone else's shoes. The bride turned, her smile softening as she spotted us in the doorway. "Zoe," she said, and her voice was like music. "You look amazing!" I froze for half a second before realizing she was talking to me. To me! She crouched gently, careful not to wrinkle her own dress, and met my eyes on level. "I knew this dress would find the right person," she said, her gaze warm. "And I can't imagine a more perfect flower girl." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. So I just smiled, a small, shy one, and gave the tiniest nod I could manage. "Thank you," I whispered. The bride stood and took my hands in hers, her long sleeves brushing softly against the lace on my dress. Her eyes glistened just a little, not enough to mess up her makeup, but enough to tell me that this moment meant more than I could really understand. "You know," she said gently, "this dress you're wearing. It was made by my mom. She sewed it herself. Every stitch." I looked down at the soft pink fabric, the delicate embroidery on the bodice, the tiny pearl beads that caught the light. It suddenly felt heavier, not because of the weight, but because of the meaning. "She made it for my niece," the bride continued, her voice soft and full of memory. "My sister's little girl. That was the first time it was worn. At my sister's wedding." She turned slightly, and I followed her gaze to a woman across the room who was zipping up one of the bridesmaid dresses. "That's my sister," she said. "And her daughter? She's in high school now. Too big to wear it again, but she loved it when she was little." The woman turned and smiled at us, kind and tired in a way only older sisters could be. "It still fits like it was made yesterday," she said. "Mom would have been thrilled." The bride gave a soft laugh through her nose. "She would have made 6 more by now." There was a quiet pause. I didn't know what to say. I just held onto the handle of the flower basket and felt the dress around me like a hug I didn't know I needed. "That's why it's special," the bride said at last. "That's why it matters so much to me. Every wedding since then, we found a way to have that dress there. For Mom. For the memory. And now, you're part of that too." I looked up at her again. My heart was fluttering like the petals in my basket. She leaned in and kissed the top of my head, right on the flower crown Shelby had placed there, and then smiled as she turned to the rest of the room. "Alright, ladies! Everyone meet Zoe, our very special flower girl." The bridesmaids turned, offering waves, warm smiles, and one dramatic awe. As if I were a puppy in a tutu. One of them even knelt down and said, "You're gonna steal the show, I just know it." The maid of honor, the bride's sister, stepped over and gently fixed the bow at my back. "Mom would have loved you," she said softly, her voice catching just for a second. I nodded. I'll do my best." The bride took my hand and gave it a squeeze. "That's all anyone ever needs to do." "Okay." A voice called from near the door, "Aunt Meredith. Places in 10 minutes." Suddenly, the room was a flurry of motion. Everyone checking hair, smoothing skirts, fluffing veils. The bride blew me a kiss before her maid of honor whisked her away for a final mirror check. I stood still, just for a second, letting it all sink in. The dress. The story, the memory. And me. We ascended the stairs, the soft creaking of the wooden steps the only sound between excited whispers and rustling fabric. The air was heavy with anticipation, the kind you feel deep in your chest. I held the flower basket tight, my fingers curling around the handle like it might steady me. Ahead of me walked the bride's sister, the maid of honor, her long pink dress trailing gracefully behind her as she pushed open the barn doors. The bridesmaids followed her one by one, all glowing in their matching gowns. Then it was just me. And the bride behind me. I glanced back at her. She looked radiant, serene. Her eyes caught mine, and she smiled softly, like a silent promise, "You're doing beautifully." I turned back around and looked for Shelby. She wasn't there. My eyes scanned the open space near the side doors, the rows of wooden chairs filling quickly with guests. Still no Shelby. I checked the other side, where the musicians were playing, where the photographers stood, but nothing. My heart started thudding faster. I looked for my mom. For Aunt Meredith. No sign of them either. I swallowed, a flicker of panic rising in my throat. For the first time in days, I felt like Dylan in a dress again. A boy alone on a stage he didn't belong on. But then, near the back corner, just behind the last row of chairs, I saw him. Ethan! In his button-up and slacks, standing tall, his hands in his pockets. But his grin was unmistakable. When our eyes met, he raised a fist and gave me a goofy, over-exaggerated thumbs up. I blinked. Then smiled. And slowly, I returned the gesture. I could do this. I turned just as the music changed. The familiar chords of "Here Comes the Bride" filled the barn, swelling through the rafters like sunlight pouring in through the windows. A small hand reached for mine, the ring bearer. 4 years old and beaming like this was the greatest moment of his life. I gave his hand a squeeze, and together we stepped forward. Out of the shadows and into the aisle. The guests all turned. Some foams lifted. Some faces melted into soft smiles. No one laughed. No one whispered. They just watched. And I walked. Each step deliberate, timed with the little boy at my side. My basket swung slightly as I tossed soft white petals into the aisle, the one Shelby and I had practiced with a dozen times over. The pink dress moved gently with each step. The tights hugged my legs. The wig's curls bounced lightly against my shoulders, and the flower crown rested like a quiet promise on my head. This was real. And somehow, it was perfect. As the bride reached the altar and the music softened into silence, I followed the ring bearer off to the side, where we'd been told to wait until the beginning of the vows. My heart was pounding, but not from nerves anymore. From pride. I had done it. I stood there just long enough to watch the couple join hands in front of the officiant. Then, as planned, I stepped quietly down from the platform, following the path toward the rows of guests. I scanned the front row until... there they were! Shelby sat toward the end, her legs swinging slightly where they didn't quite reach the ground. She was wearing a soft light purple dress, simple but elegant, and she beamed when she saw me. Her smile was wide and proud, and it made something flutter in my chest. Beside her sat my mom. She wore a light blue dress, her first dress in years, I realized, and she looked beautiful. Not just dressed up, but soft around the edges in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. She patted the space beside her gently, and I carefully slipped into the seat. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. My mom rested a hand lightly on mine, and Shelby gave my knee a playful bump with hers. The ceremony was happening just a few feet away, the vows, the laughter, the quiet sniffles from family, but for that moment, all I could focus on was us. The three of us. Me, in the dress. Them, right there with me. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a boy pretending. I just felt like me. And that was enough. I settled quietly into the seat between Shelby and Mom, my skirt puffing slightly as I smoothed it beneath me. My legs were still a little stiff from standing, and my heart was still riding that strange wave, not fear, not excitement, but something new. Something soft and full. The ceremony continued just ahead. The bride and groom stood hand in hand, framed by soft lights and pastel flowers. The officiant's voice was calm and warm, guiding them through their vows. I watched the bride's eyes shimmer as she promised to always support him, to build a life filled with laughter and patience. I saw the way he smiled back at her, his voice cracking slightly as he swore to love her no matter what, through every storm, every quiet morning, every unexpected moment. I swallowed hard. For a second, I didn't feel like I was watching strangers. It felt like a story I had walked into, dressed as someone else, but somehow more myself than I'd ever been. Mom squeezed my hand gently. I turned slightly and looked up at her. She didn't say anything, just gave me a tiny nod, her lips pressing into a quiet, proud smile. And then, "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced. The bride grinned, the groom laughed nervously, and they leaned in. The guests erupted into soft cheers and applause as their lips met, not just a kiss, but a promise. A beginning. I clapped too, almost without thinking. Shelby leaned over and whispered, "Told you it was gonna be beautiful." I nodded, my eyes still fixed on the couple. It really was. Chapter 19. As the applause faded and the couple walked hand in hand back down the aisle, I stood when Shelby nudged me gently. "Come on," she whispered. "Pictures." I straightened my posture, remembering everything she taught me. Chin up. Shoulders back. Light steps, even in flats. I followed the bridal party to the front of the venue, where the photographer was already giving soft directions, lining people up, adjusting bouquets and angles. The bridesmaids formed a graceful arch, and I was gently guided into place beside them, not quite a bridesmaid, but definitely one of them. One of the girls. I stood where they told me, holding my little flower basket, and smiled when prompted. Not because I was told to. Because I wanted to? The bride crouched down beside me at one point, fixing a strand of hair from the long, curled wig that framed my face. "You were perfect," she whispered. "Thank you for being part of this." I nodded, cheeks warm. "You're welcome." Another photo was snapped. Then we all moved outside into the golden sunlight, where the wind played gently with the lace of dresses and the ribbons of bouquets. The photographer guided us to a grassy clearing under a tree where the bride and groom stood side by side, smiling like the world had finally landed in place. Someone handed me the ring bearer, a squirmy, giggly 4-year-old boy in a tiny tux who, for some reason, thought I was the funniest person alive. I held him carefully, grinning as he made a face for the camera, and the shutter clicked again. I didn't know how I looked in that photo, dress puffed out, flower crown slightly tilted, ring bearer in my arms, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't care. Because in that moment, I belonged. The sun was low in the sky now, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. Strings of fairy lights stretched from post to post, twinkling gently as dusk settled over the farm. Tables were arranged in a horseshoe shape around a wide open lawn that had been cleared for dancing. People laughed, clinked glasses, snapped photos. Music floated on the air, low and happy and perfect. I sat at one of the round tables with Mom, Shelby, and Ethan. A cloth napkin rested in my lap, and my plate was piled high with roasted chicken, vegetables, and mashed potatoes. Waiters in black vests moved quietly between tables, refilling lemonade and collecting used dishes. I was trying to eat without dropping anything on my dress when another guest, a woman I'd never seen before, leaned down toward me. "You look absolutely beautiful," she said with a kind smile. "The pink suits you perfectly." "Thank you," I said, my voice shy and small. She was in the first. In fact, I lost count of how many guests had stopped by to say almost the same thing. Each time, I smiled and nodded, my cheeks turning warmer and warmer. A few called me sweetheart, or told me I looked just like a little princess. And strangely, I didn't hate it. After a while, the music changed. A new song started, slow, graceful, with a soft violin behind the melody. Everyone turned their chairs as the bride and groom walked onto the dance floor. They moved together like they belonged in a fairy tale. The bride's dress shimmered under the lights. The groom whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, resting her head on his shoulder as they turned in a slow, gentle circle. "They look really happy," I said quietly. "They are," Mom said, her voice soft. "They've been through a lot to get here." The song faded out and a new one began, this time just a little faster, something still slow, but light-hearted. And that's when Ethan stood up. He walked around the table, then held out his hand to me, grinning. "Come on, Zoe! Let's dance!" I blinked. "What? I've never danced before." He shrugged. "Neither have I. But I'll guide you. Just follow my lead." I hesitated, looking at Shelby, who smirked and gave me a double thumbs up. With a deep breath, I reached up and took his hand. Ethan led me gently to the edge of the dance floor, then placed one hand on my waist and took my other in his. "You get to be in the girl position," he joked, winking. I gave a tiny laugh, nervous, but not scared. The music rose around us, and we moved, not gracefully, not perfectly, but enough. My shoes tapped softly against the grass and my dress swayed with every step. I kept my eyes mostly on Ethan's shoes, trying not to trip. "You're doing great," he whispered. I glanced up at him. And for a moment, the whole world fell away. There was no dress, no performance, no pretending. Just two kids dancing under a sky full of string lights. And maybe, that was enough. Chapter 20. I got back into the store after the reception was over and I walked to the changing room. I got out of the dress but I didn't feel like wearing boy clothes yet. Instead, I picked out the ruffled denim skirt Shelby had let me borrow and the pink t-shirt with the tiny white bow stitched near the collar. I hesitated for a second when I grabbed the flower-patterned underwear from the drawer, then shrugged and slipped it on. The clothes felt soft. Familiar, now. And somehow, right for the moment. I looked at myself in the mirror, not in a dramatic, staring into my soul kind of way. Just a quick glance. I didn't see Zoe. But I didn't quite see the old me either. I wasn't sure who I was. Just me. I padded out of the dressing room and climbed the stairs up to the main house. The wood creaked under my bare feet, no shoes right now, just the quiet pat-pat of skin on old hardwood. As I reached the top of the steps and stepped into the living room, I froze for a moment. Everyone was there. Mom was on the couch, holding a mug of coffee with both hands, her legs curled under her. Aunt Meredith was in her favorite chair, sorting through a stack of mail and catalogs on her lap. Ethan and Shelby sat on the floor by the coffee table, playing some card game I didn't recognize. Shelby looked up first and smiled wide. "There you are." Ethan gave me a grin and a little wave. "Nice shirt." Mom looked at me, really looked, and for once, she didn't try to hide the softness in her eyes. She didn't say anything right away, just gave a small nod. I wondered what she was thinking. I walked in slowly, trying not to feel like all eyes were on me. Aunt Meredith glanced up from her pile of papers, smiled. Softly I slid next to Shelby as we all talked. For the first time in days, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't pretending. I was just part of the room. And that felt good. Shelby scooted over and dealt me into the game without asking if I wanted to play. I was glad she didn't ask, it meant I didn't have to explain how tired I felt. Not tired like needing sleep. Just tired in my heart. In my chest. Ethan handed me a few cards. "We're playing Go Fish. Don't mess it up." I gave him a crooked smile. No promises. The game didn't last long. I wasn't really paying attention. None of us were. We talked more than we played, about nothing and everything. About how pretty the bride looked. How many cookies Ethan had managed to sneak off the dessert table. How Shelby had to wear itchy tights again and nearly tripped on the runner going down the aisle. Eventually, the cards were forgotten. The game faded. The laughter faded too, into soft conversation and tired silence. "I don't want to go home yet," I said out loud. It surprised me that I said it. Even more that I meant it. Mom looked at me from the couch. Her eyes were gentle. "You got one more night, honey." "I know," I said. "But I don't mean just the house." Everyone was quiet. I pulled my knees up to my chest, the soft fabric of the skirt bunching beneath my hands. I didn't think this would mean anything. I thought it was just a thing I had to do. But now, I don't know. It feels like I found a part of me I didn't even know was missing. Mom came off the couch and sat next to me on the floor. She didn't say anything right away. Just wrapped her arm around me and held me close. "I don't know what this means," I whispered into her shoulder. "I don't know if it means anything. I just know that for the first time in a really long time, I felt good. Happy. Being Zoe made me feel okay." Shelby was quiet too. I glanced over and saw her blinking quickly, like maybe she was trying not to cry. Ethan gave me a small nod. "Then don't lose that. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to be less happy just to make them more comfortable." I looked down at my hands. The nails still faintly pink. The sleeves of my borrowed shirt brushing my wrists. Mom kissed the top of my head and held me a little tighter. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," she said. "But whatever you need, whoever you are, I'm here. We're all here." And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt safe. Not just dressed up. Not just pretending. Not just a boy playing a part. But just me. And that was enough. Chapter 21 Goodbyes. The morning felt too quiet. No laughter drifting through the halls, no Shelby banging on my door asking what I was going to wear, no Ethan waiting at the bottom of the stairs with a teasing grin. Just sunlight, soft and gold, falling across the floor of my aunt's house. And the sound of a suitcase zipper being pulled shut. I was back in my boy clothes. Just jeans and a hoodie. My hair, well, the wig, was packed away. The pink nail polish was mostly chipped off. I looked like Dylan again. And yet, I didn't feel like just Dylan anymore. Mom had already packed up the car. I carried my backpack out through the front door and paused at the edge of the porch. My eyes found them instantly, the three people who had made this place feel like more than just a place to stay. Aunt Meredith stood by the porch steps, holding a cup of coffee and smiling softly, the kind of smile only she could pull off. Shelby was next to her in jean overalls and a bright yellow t-shirt, her arms crossed but her eyes a little glassy. And Ethan! He leaned casually against the fence, trying to look cool, but his hand gave him away, gripping the rail tight. Mom opened the trunk, but I didn't move just yet. "Come on," she said gently. "You can say goodbye." I nodded, swallowing a lump that was way too big for my throat. I stepped off the porch and wrapped my arms around my aunt first. She smelled like lavender and cinnamon rolls. Her hug was warm and safe, just like every memory I now had of this farm. "You did good, sweetheart," she whispered in my ear. "I'm so proud of you." I nodded into her shoulder. "Thanks for everything." She pulled back and brushed a hand over my hair like she had when I was little. Then she stepped aside. Shelby didn't wait. She walked up and just hugged me, tight, fierce, and real. My arms found their way around her without even thinking. "I'm gonna miss you," she said into my shoulder. "Me too," I whispered. She pulled back and gave me a small smile. "Don't forget who Zoe is, okay?" "I won't," I said. And somehow, I knew I wouldn't. Finally, Ethan stepped forward. He didn't go in for a hug. Just held out a fist. I bumped it with mine. "Drive safe, dude," he said. "Thanks for not freaking out," I said. He shrugged. was never gonna freak out. And that meant more than he probably realized. I turned back toward the car, heart aching a little in that weird way, not sad, just full. I climbed in and buckled my seatbelt as Mom started the engine. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked out the window one last time. They were still standing there. Shelby waving both arms, and Meredith blowing a kiss, Ethan giving a nod like a secret code. I waved back, and for a moment, I let myself imagine it, maybe someday, I'd come back. Maybe as Dylan. Maybe as Zoe. Maybe as both. And that thought didn't scare me anymore. It felt like hope.